Most people think a cheap plastic pregnancy test just changes color. For me, that little pink line triggered identity theft, pushed my marriage to the brink, and set a legal trap right in my kitchen. I thought I was saving my family, but I was just funding their lifestyle. So when my sister smiled and announced baby number 6, I stopped being a sister and started acting like a forensic accountant. My name is Claire Butler, and at 35 years old, I had officially become a ghost in my own house. I lived in Columbus, Ohio, where the winters were gray enough to seep into your bones and stay there until July. But the chill inside my ribcage had nothing to do with the weather. It was the specific, heavy cold of exhaustion. I had just pulled into the driveway after a 10-hour shift as an operations manager at Hearthline Freight Solutions. My job was to tell truck drivers why their routes were impossible, or why their payouts were delayed. It was a job that required a spine made of steel and a voice that did not shake. But sitting in my car, staring at the peeling paint on my garage door, I felt like a paper doll left out in the rain. I turned the ignition off, but I did not open the door, not yet. I needed 60 seconds of silence before I walked into the chaos. Inside that house were my husband, Simon, my sister, Brittany, her boyfriend, Kyle, and 5 children who were technically my nieces and nephews, but functionally my dependents. For 3 years, Simon and I had been financing this circus. We bought the groceries, we paid the mortgage, we covered the co-pays for ear infections and the fees for field trips. We were the adults. Brittany and Kyle were the eternal adolescents, playing house with our money and our patience. I took a breath that rattled in my chest, grabbed my bag, and went inside. The smell hit me first. It was a thick, warm mixture of frying grease, stale laundry, and the cloying scent of the cheap vanilla body spray Brittany used to mask the smell of cigarettes. The living room was a war zone of plastic toys and discarded snack wrappers. Kyle Mercer was sprawled on our beige sectional, the one I had bought with my first bonus check 4 years ago watching a football game. He did not look up. He did not mute the television. He just scratched his stomach and took a sip from a can of soda that I had paid for. Simon was in the kitchen, wiping down the counter with a rag that looked greasier than the surface he was cleaning. My husband was a good man. He was a soft man. He hated conflict the way most people hate root canals, and his coping mechanism was to make himself as small as possible to avoid drawing fire. When he saw me, his shoulders dropped an inch, a silent signal of relief. "Hey," he said, his voice low. "Rough day." "Drivers in Toledo went on strike," I said, putting my keys in the bowl. "Operations is a nightmare. Is there any coffee left?" "I think Brittany finished the pot," Simon said, wincing slightly as if he expected me to yell at him for it. I did not yell. I did not have the energy to yell about coffee. I just leaned against the counter and closed my eyes. That was when I heard the footsteps. They were not the thudding, chaotic steps of the kids. These were deliberate, theatrical. Brittany Shaw walked into the room. My sister was 31, but she still carried herself with the chaotic confidence of a high school prom queen who peaked too early. She was wearing one of my oversized hoodies and a pair of leggings that had seen better days. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and her face was scrubbed clean, glowing with a strange, frantic energy. She did not say hello. She did not ask how my day was. She walked to the center of the room, right between the kitchen island and the couch where Kyle was ignoring the world, and she placed both hands on her stomach. She rubbed the fabric in a slow, circular motion, a smile spreading across her face that made my blood run cold. It was not a smile of joy. It was a smile of possession. It was a smile that said she had something I did not, and she was going to make me pay for it. "Guess what?" she chirped. The sweetness in her voice was curdled. Simon froze with the rag in his hand. I saw his eyes dart to her stomach, then to me, wide with a panic he was trying desperately to suppress. Even Kyle shifted on the couch, muting the TV, though he did not sit up. "Brittany," I said, my voice flat. "What is it?" She giggled, a sound that belonged in a horror movie. "I took a test this morning. A few of them, actually. just to be sure. She paused for effect, looking from Simon to me, savoring the tension she was creating. "Number 6 is on the way." The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush furniture. For a moment, nobody moved. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. 5 children. She already had 5 children. Mason, the oldest at 17, was practically raising the other 4 while Brittany and Kyle played the victims of a cruel economy they refused to participate in. 5 kids cramming into the 3 bedrooms of my house. 5 mouths that Simon and I fed while our savings account dwindled to double digits. And now, number 6. "Congratulations," Kyle grunted from the couch, though he sounded about as excited as a man ordering a sandwich he did not really want. "6, Simon whispered. He looked pale. "Brittany, that's a lot." "It is a blessing," Brittany snapped, her eyes narrowing instantly. "Kyle and I have been talking about completing our family. We want an even number." I looked at her. I really looked at her. I saw the defiance in her jaw. She was not announcing a pregnancy. She was announcing a renewal of her lease on my life. A baby meant she could not work. A baby meant she needed better food, more vitamins, new clothes. A baby meant she was untouchable for another 9 months, and then for 18 years after that. "We need to figure out the room situation," Brittany continued, breezy and oblivious to the atmosphere. "Mason can move to the basement. I know it is damp down there, but he is almost 18. He can deal with it. We will need the nursery back. I know you turned it into your office, Claire, but obviously, the baby comes first, and we need to look at strollers. The old one has a wobbly wheel." She was doing it again. She was spending my money, rearranging my house, and cannibalizing my life before the stick was even dry. Something inside me snapped. It was not a loud snap. It was the quiet sound of a tether finally breaking after 3 years of friction. "No," I said. The word hung in the air, foreign and sharp. Brittany blinked. "What?" "No," I repeated. I pushed off the counter and stood straight. My feet ached, my back hurt, and I was so tired I could cry. But my voice was steady. "No nursery, no strollers, no moving Mason to the basement." Brittany's face crumpled into a mask of confusion that quickly hardened into anger. "What are you talking about? I am pregnant." "Claire, do you want your niece or nephew sleeping in a drawer?" "I want you to be a parent," I said. "I want you and Kyle to figure this out. I have raised 5 of your children. Brittany, I have paid for 5 sets of braces, 5 years of school supplies, and 5 million boxes of macaroni and cheese. I am done. If you are having another baby, that is your choice. But this time, you handle it." Kyle sat up. "Hey, watch how you talk to her. She is in a delicate condition." "You shut up," I said, not even looking at him. "You have been sitting on that couch since 2023. Unless you are standing up to go to a job interview, I do not want to hear a sound from you," Brittany gasped, pressing a hand to her chest. "How can you be so cruel? I am carrying life, Claire life, just because you—" She trailed off, letting the sentence hang there, heavy with the implications she used whenever she wanted to hurt me. "Just because you never had kids, just because you are barren." She did not say it, but she projected it loud and clear. "This is not about me," I said. "This is about math. Simon and I cannot afford another child. We literally cannot do it." "You are the manager," Brittany cried, her voice rising to a shrill pitch. "You make good money. You are just being selfish. You want to buy new clothes and go on vacations while your family starves. Is that it? You want to punish me for being fertile." "We are not starving anyone," Simon interjected, his voice trembling. He stepped between us, holding his hands up in a surrender motion. "Claire just means things are tight. Brittany, we are stretched thin." "Stretched thin?" Brittany laughed. A harsh, barking sound. "You guys have 2 cars. You have this house. You have retirement accounts. Don't lie to me." "The retirement account is empty, Brittany," I shouted. It was the first time I had raised my voice. We drained it last year. When Aiden needed that surgery, you didn't have insurance for remember. That is in the past. She waved a hand dismissively. You always bring up the past. I am talking about right now. I need support. Stress is bad for the baby. Do you want me to miscarry? Is that what you want? You want to kill this baby because you are jealous. Stop it, I said. Nobody wants that, but I am telling you, the bank is closed. Start looking for a job. Kyle, start looking for assistance programs. Brittany, because my paycheck is spoken for. Brittany stared at me, her eyes wet with weaponized tears. She looked at Simon. She knew he was the weak link. She knew he would set himself on fire if it meant keeping the peace. Simon, she sobbed, tell her we are family. Tell her you won't let my baby go without. Simon looked at her, then at me. He looked trapped. He rubbed the back of his neck, his face flushing red. Claire, maybe we can look at the budget again. I mean, it is a baby. We can't just. We are 2 months behind on the car payment. Simon, I cut him off, staring him down. We are 1 missed check away from foreclosure. There is no budget to look at. The room went silent again, but this silence was different. It was dangerous. I saw a spark light up in Brittany's eyes. It was not sympathy. It was calculation. She had just been handed a piece of ammunition. Wait, she said, her voice dropping the hysterical edge and becoming dangerously calm. You are behind on the car payment. Simon closed his eyes. He knew he had messed up. It's just a cash flow issue. We will catch up next week. You told me you were doing fine, Brittany said, crossing her arms. You told me you could handle the household expenses if I handled the childcare. You don't handle the childcare, I argued. I make the lunches. I sign the permission slips. I drive them to school. You sleep until noon. Brittany ignored me. She was focused on Simon now. So you are broke. That is what you are saying. My sister, the big successful manager, and her husband are broke. She let out a short, incredulous breath. Well, that changes things. If you guys are that incompetent with money, maybe you shouldn't be managing mine. We don't manage your money. Brittany, I said, feeling a headache begin to throb behind my temples. You don't have any money. I have rights, she said darkly. And I have government benefits coming for this baby. Maybe I shouldn't trust you with the household anymore. Maybe I need to take charge. Someone has to look out for these kids if you're driving us into a ditch. It was absurd. It was gaslighting of the highest order. The woman who had never paid a utility bill in her life was lecturing me on fiscal responsibility because my husband admitted we were drowning in the debt she created. We are done discussing this, I said, turning away. Kyle, get a job. Brittany, figure it out. I am going to take a shower. Don't walk away from me, Brittany yelled. But I kept walking. I climbed the stairs, the sound of her voice following me like a physical weight. I went into the bathroom and locked the door. I did not turn on the shower. I just sat on the edge of the tub and put my head in my hands. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I saw it then, on the bathroom counter, right next to my toothbrush holder. A plastic stick, white and pink, 2 distinct lines. She had left it there. She had taken the test in my bathroom, probably used my toilet paper, and left the evidence there for me to clean up. Like everything else, I reached out and picked it up. It felt light, insignificant, a piece of mass-produced plastic that cost maybe $8 at the pharmacy. But as I held it, I realized it wasn't just a test. It was a verdict. It was a notification that the next 18 years of my life were being drafted into service without my consent. I looked at those 2 pink lines. They were perfect, unyielding, and absolute. Downstairs, I heard Brittany's voice again. She wasn't shouting anymore. She was talking to Simon in a low, murmuring tone, the tone she used when she was twisting the knife, the tone she used when she was getting exactly what she wanted. That piece of cheap plastic, I whispered to the empty room, tightening my grip until my knuckles turned white. It just sentenced me to life. But as I stared at it, a cold clarity began to wash over the exhaustion. I had said no. For the first time in 3 years, I had said the word, and even though the sky hadn't fallen, the ground had shifted. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. I looked tired. I looked old. But for the first time in a long time, I looked angry enough to do something about it. 4 in the morning is not a time for humans. It is a time for ghosts and bakers. And apparently, for operations managers who have been drafted into running a domestic boot camp. My alarm went off with a digital shriek that I had long ago stopped resenting and started obeying with the muscle memory of a soldier. I rolled out of bed, leaving Simon snoring softly in the warmth of the duvet. He looked peaceful. I felt a fleeting surge of envy so sharp it almost tasted like bile. He got to be the fun uncle, the soft-spoken husband, the guy who kept the peace. I had to be the general. The house was quiet, but it was a deceptive quiet. It was the silence of a bomb waiting to detonate. I walked down the hallway, navigating by memory to avoid the Lego landmines scattered on the carpet. The kitchen was cold. It smelled of the trash that had not been taken out the night before, a sour mix of old milk and ketchup. I flipped on the light and stared at the counter. It was my workstation, not the one at Hearthline Freight Solutions with the dual monitors and the ergonomic chair, but the one that mattered more. 5 plastic lunchboxes were lined up like soldiers awaiting inspection. Blue, red, green, a princess print that was peeling at the corners, and a black one for the oldest, Mason, who was trying desperately to be invisible. I opened the refrigerator and began the assembly line. 2 loaves of white bread, a family-sized tub of generic peanut butter, a bag of apples that were starting to look a little bruised. I moved with a mechanical efficiency that frightened me sometimes. Spread, slap, cut, spread, slap, cut. I was not making food. I was manufacturing calories. As I reached for the juice boxes, my hand brushed against something sticky on the counter. I looked down. It was a half-empty can of energy drink. Left open, flanked by the crumpled wrapper of a spicy chicken sandwich. Kyle. He had been up late again, gaming or watching replays of sports matches he had no money to bet on. He had left his trash right where he finished it, a silent testament to his absolute confidence that someone else, me, would deal with it. I picked up the can. It was light, mostly backwash. I crushed it in my hand. The aluminum crumpled with a satisfying crunch that echoed too loudly in the empty kitchen. I did not have time to be angry. Anger was a luxury. I had a schedule. I moved to the dining table, where the backpacks were slumped in a pile. I checked Aiden's math homework. He had gotten 3 out of 10 problems wrong. I erased the answers and wrote a sticky note. Check your remainders. Love, Aunt Claire. I checked the permission slips. I checked for socks. Why were there never enough socks? I spent 10 minutes hunting for a matching pair for the 6-year-old. Eventually finding one under the sofa cushion and another inside a rain boot. By 5:30, the sun was threatening to rise, and the house began to stir. Brittany emerged from the guest room, which was permanently her room, now clutching her stomach. She wore a stained t-shirt and boxer shorts, her hair a bird's nest of tangles. She groaned theatrically as she shuffled into the kitchen. "Water," she croaked. "Ice water. I feel like I'm going to throw up." I was in the middle of zipping up 5 backpacks. "The cups are in the cupboard. Brittany, the ice is in the freezer." She slumped onto a bar stool, looking at me with wide, wounded eyes. "I can't reach up. I get dizzy. It is the hormones. This pregnancy is different. Claire, it is harder. It was always harder. Every pregnancy was the hardest one in medical history." I put down the backpacks, walked to the cupboard, got a glass, filled it with ice and water, and set it down in front of her. She did not say thank you. She just took a sip and sighed, as if she had just survived a marathon. "Kyle is still sleeping," she whispered. "Don't make too much noise. He has a migraine." "He has a sugar crash," I corrected, tossing the crushed can into the recycling bin with more force than necessary. "He left his garbage on my counter again. He forgets," she said dismissively. "He has a lot on his mind." "Like what?" I asked, grabbing my purse. "Which level of Call of Duty to play next?" "You are so cynical," she muttered into her water. You don't understand the pressure he's under. I didn't answer. I sat down at the small desk in the corner of the kitchen where we kept the house admin. I opened the ledger. This was my ritual. Every morning, before the chaos truly broke loose, I checked the numbers. It was a way of convincing myself I still had control. I looked at the entry for the electric bill. It was circled in red. 2 weeks ago, I had given Brittany $300 in cash. I had handed it to her specifically because she was going to the grocery store, which also had a utility payment kiosk. I told her to pay the electric bill. She had sworn she did. I pulled up the utility website on my phone. The balance was still there, plus a late fee. "Brittany," I said, keeping my voice low, "the electric bill wasn't paid." She froze. She didn't look at me. She started tracing the condensation on her glass. "Oh, yeah, about that. Where is the money?" "I was going to pay it," she said, her voice taking on that defensive whine I knew so well. But then I remembered the kids needed vitamins, and Kyle needed gas to go look for jobs. And I thought, surely the electric company has a grace period. They can't just cut off a family with children. That is illegal. "It is not illegal," I said, feeling a vein throb in my temple. "And $300 does not buy vitamins and gas. Where is the rest of it?" "I don't know," she snapped. Suddenly the victim. "I don't keep receipts for every penny. Claire, I am trying to survive here. Why are you interrogating me over a few dollars when I'm literally growing a human being?" It wasn't a few dollars. It was the difference between keeping the lights on and living in the dark. But I didn't have the energy to fight. I never did. That was how she won. She exhausted me until paying the bill myself was easier than extracting the truth. I transferred the money from my nearly empty personal checking account to the utility company. Another $315 gone. Another hole in the boat. By 6:30, the kids were up. The kitchen became a mosh pit of shouting, crying, and spilled milk. Simon came down, dressed for work in his button-down shirt that was fraying at the collar. He looked tired. He started to help Aiden tie his shoes, but Brittany intercepted him. "Simon," she cooed, leaning against the counter and holding her lower back. "The trash needs to go out. Kyle would do it, but his back is acting up. You are so strong. Would you mind?" "I was just helping Aiden," Simon stuttered. "Aiden can tie his own shoes," Brittany said. "But I can't lift those heavy bags. Please, you are such a good man. You always know how to take care of us." I watched as Simon's posture shifted. He straightened up a little. He liked being the hero. He liked being the good man. He nodded and went to take out the trash that belonged to Kyle. Trash that Kyle had created and ignored. Brittany caught my eye and smirked. It wasn't a malicious smirk. It was just the satisfied look of a puppeteer whose strings were working perfectly. I ushered the kids into the car. The drive to school was a blur of traffic and arguments about which radio station to play. I dropped them off, watching 5 heads bob away from me without a backward glance. I was not their mother. I was just the logistics provider. I arrived at work 7 minutes late. My boss, a man named Gary, who thought micromanagement was a leadership style, tapped his watch as I walked in. I spent the next 4 hours putting out fires. A truck broke down in Kentucky. A shipment of frozen meat thawed out in a warehouse in Indiana. I yelled at people. People yelled at me. It was stress. But it was organized stress. It made sense. Then my phone rang. It was the school. "Ms. Butler," the secretary's voice was clipped. "We have Aiden here in the office. The 3rd grade is leaving for the science center in 20 minutes, and he does not have his signed permission slip." I closed my eyes. I had put the slip in his bag. I had watched him put the bag on his back. "I signed it," I said. "It is in the front pocket of his backpack." "He says he can't find it," the secretary said. "And we can't let him on the bus without a guardian's signature. Can you come down?" "I am at work," I said, trying to keep the desperation out of my voice. "Can't you call his mother? Brittany is at home. She lives 10 minutes from the school." There was a pause on the other end. A long, awkward silence. "We tried Ms. Shaw," the secretary said. She didn't answer. We also tried Mr. Mercer. He picked up, but he said he didn't have a car and hung up. Of course. I will be there in 20 minutes, I said. I hung up. I looked at the pile of shipping manifests on my desk. I looked at my boss, who was watching me through the glass wall of his office. I stood up, grabbed my keys, and walked out. I was losing money every minute I wasn't at my desk, but the system demanded a guardian. And apparently, I was the only one who qualified. When I got to the school, Aiden was sitting on a plastic chair, crying. He wasn't crying because he was sad. He was crying because he was embarrassed. I signed the form. I hugged him. I watched him run to the bus. Then I sat in my car in the school parking lot and screamed. It was a short, sharp scream, contained entirely within the cabin of my sedan. My phone buzzed again, a notification from my bank. Alert card, not present transaction, $0.99. Merchant, AZData_SVCS. I stared at the screen. 99 cents. It was nothing, less than a pack of gum. But the merchant name was unfamiliar. It looked like a test code. I knew enough about fraud from my job to know that thieves often ran a small charge just to see if the card was active before they drained the account. I felt a cold prickle at the base of my neck. I called the bank immediately. I didn't make this charge, I told the automated system, fighting through the menus until I got a human. It looks like a pre-authorization check, the representative said. Sometimes subscription services do this. Did you sign up for a new streaming service? No, I said. I didn't sign up for anything. Well, nothing has actually been withdrawn yet, she said, her voice bored. If you want to cancel the card, we can send you a new one in 7 to 10 business days. 7 to 10 days without a debit card. I couldn't do that. I needed gas. I needed groceries for the 5 kids. I needed to pay the mortgage. Just flag it, I said, defeated. If anything else comes through, deny it. Will do, she said. I hung up, but the cold feeling didn't leave. I drove back to work, but the day was already ruined. When I got home that evening, the cycle restarted. Dinner, dishes, homework, arguments. Brittany found me in the laundry room. I was folding a mountain of tiny t-shirts. She leaned against the dryer, eating an apple, one of the apples I had bought that morning. So, she said, chewing loudly. I was looking at the calendar. My first prenatal checkup is next week. Okay, I said, not looking up. And, since I don't have insurance right now, I was thinking... I stopped folding. Thinking what? Well, we look a lot alike, she said. She didn't even blink. And you have that really good plan through your work. The PPO one? I was thinking maybe I could just borrow your card just for the checkups. I mean, who is going to know we are sisters? We have the same last name, basically, if you don't count Simon's name. I stared at her. The audacity was breathtaking. It was a physical thing, like a slap in the face. That is insurance fraud. Brittany, I said. That is a felony. It is not fraud, she rolled her eyes. It is family. You are barely using it. You haven't been to the doctor in 2 years. Why should that coverage go to waste when your niece or nephew needs it? Because it is tied to my identity, I said, my voice rising. Because if you get caught, I lose my job. I go to jail. We lose the house. You are always so dramatic, she huffed. Fine, I will just go to the free clinic. I will sit in a waiting room full of sick people for 6 hours while pregnant. If I catch something and the baby gets sick, that will be on your conscience. She turned and marched out, leaving the guilt hanging in the air like damp lint. I finished the laundry in silence. Then, I went to the kitchen table and pulled out my spending log. It was a notebook I had kept for 5 years. I started flipping back through the pages. I looked at the dates. June 2024, I had saved $2,000 for a weekend getaway with Simon. Event: Brittany's car broke down. Repair cost $1,800. We didn't go on the trip. December 2024, I had saved $500 for a new winter coat. Event: Kyle got arrested for a noise complaint and an unpaid ticket. Bail and fines, $450. I wore my old coat with the broken zipper. August 2025. I had finally built up an emergency fund of $3,000. Event: Brittany lost her purse with the rent money for their old apartment. If we didn't pay, they would be evicted. We paid. They got evicted 3 months later anyway and moved in with us. The pattern was undeniable. It wasn't bad luck. It was a homing beacon. Every time I managed to claw my way a few inches above the waterline, Brittany sensed the surplus. She smelled the stability, and she created a crisis to absorb it. She was not just a drain, she was a siphon. I closed the notebook. The house was finally quiet. Everyone was asleep. I walked into the hallway and stood in front of the full-length mirror near the coat rack. I looked at myself. I saw the dark circles under my eyes. I saw the gray hairs that were multiplying at my temples. I saw a woman who was wearing a shirt she had bought 4 years ago, for a long time. I had told myself I was a good sister. I was the responsible one. I was the safety net. But as I looked at my reflection, I realized the truth. I wasn't a sister. I wasn't a safety net. I was an infrastructure. I was the power grid. I was the water supply. I was the bank. I was the logistics network. They did not love me. They relied on me. You don't love the electricity. You just flip the switch and expect the light to come on. And when it doesn't, you kick the wall. Brittany didn't want a sister. She wanted a host. I touched the glass of the mirror. My finger left a smudge. System failure imminent, I whispered to the woman in the glass. The 99-cent charge flashed in my mind again. A test. A probe. Someone checking the fences to see if the power was still on. I turned off the hall light, plunging the house into darkness. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid of the dark. I was afraid of what I was going to find when I finally turned the lights on for real. 2 days later, the cavalry arrived, but they did not come to rescue me. They came to siege the castle. It was 7 in the evening on a Tuesday. I had just walked through the door, my feet throbbing from a day of arguing with a warehouse manager in Kentucky about shipping zones. I wanted a glass of wine and silence. Instead, I walked into a tribunal. Sitting in my favorite armchair, the one I had reupholstered myself 3 years ago, was my Aunt Marlene. Marlene Holt was not the kind of aunt who baked cookies and slipped you $20 bills on your birthday. She was the matriarch of the family's dysfunction, a woman who wielded guilt like a loaded weapon. She was wearing her signature floral blouse and a look of disappointed benevolence that usually preceded a demand for money. Brittany was curled up on the sofa next to her, looking small and tragical. Kyle was there too, sitting on the floor with his back against the wall, picking at his fingernails with a pocket knife. Simon sat on the edge of the coffee table, looking like a man awaiting sentencing. "Claire," Marlene said. She did not stand up. She did not ask how my day was. She simply said my name as if it were an accusation. "We need to talk." I dropped my bag on the floor. It hit the wood with a heavy thud. "Hello, Aunt Marlene? To what do I owe the pleasure?" "Don't take that tone with me," she said, smoothing the fabric of her slacks. "I drove 40 minutes to get here because your sister called me in tears. She tells me you are causing her undue stress, in her condition." I looked at Brittany. She sniffled audibly and looked away. "I am not causing stress," I said, walking to the kitchen to get a glass of water because if I had reached for the wine, Marlene would have used it as evidence of my moral decay. "I am setting boundaries. There is a difference." Boundaries. Marlene tasted the word as if it were spoiled milk. "That is a very modern word for selfishness. Claire, family does not have boundaries. Family has obligations." "I have fulfilled my obligations," I said, leaning against the kitchen island, keeping the barrier of granite between us. "I house them. I feed them. I clothe them. What more is there?" "It is about the future," Brittany piped up. Her voice was stronger now that she had backup. "We were talking, Aunt Marlene and I, about the logistics of the baby." "The baby?" I repeated. "Yes," Marlene took over, folding her hands. "Brittany is going to have 6 children. You have a 3-bedroom house. But more importantly, you have a transport problem. You cannot fit 6 children and 3 adults into your little sedan. It is not a transport problem, I said. Kyle has legs. He can take the bus. Kyle snorted but didn't look up from his nails. Be serious, Claire, Marlene snapped. We have come up with a solution, a way to help the family move forward. I can't wait to hear it, I said. Brittany sat up straighter. We found a car. A dealership on the north side has a used SUV, a big one, leather seats, navigation, the works. It seats 8 comfortably. That sounds nice, I said dangerously. How are you paying for it? Well, Brittany hesitated, glancing at Marlene for courage. We did the math. If we trade in your car, the trade-in value covers the down payment, and the monthly payments on the SUV would be roughly the same as what you are paying now. Maybe just $50 or $60 more. It is basically an even swap. The room seemed to tilt. My car, I asked, my voice very quiet. You want to sell my car? It is for the family, Marlene said, nodding as if this were the most logical thing in the world. Your car is a selfish luxury. Claire, it seats 5. It is useless for the group. The SUV serves everyone. You can still drive it to work, obviously, but during the day, Brittany can use it for appointments and errands. I drive 40 miles to work, I said. My car is a hybrid. It gets 50 miles to the gallon. That SUV probably gets 50, and who is paying for the gas? Me. And you want me to drive a tank into the city every day so Brittany can have a status symbol to drive to the grocery store she doesn't pay for? See? Brittany threw her hands up, turning to Marlene. See how she is? She cares more about her gas mileage than her nieces and nephews. It is not about the gas, I said, gripping the edge of the counter. It is my car. My name is on the title. I paid the down payment. I pay the monthly note. It is the one thing I own that you haven't touched. Materialism, Marlene sighed, shaking her head. It is a sickness. You have been blessed with a good job. Claire, you have been blessed with a husband who tolerates your ambition, and yet, you hoard. You hoard your resources while your sister struggles. She turned her gaze to Simon. Simon, she said softly, you are the man of the house. Surely you see the sense in this. A larger vehicle is safer. It is practical. Do you want your wife driving around in a tiny car that can't even help the family? Simon looked at me, panic in his eyes. He hated this. He hated being put in the middle. I mean, he stammered, the space issue is real. Claire, when we go anywhere, we have to take 2 cars. Or Kyle has to stay behind. Kyle should stay behind. I snapped. Kyle should be at work. Hey, Kyle spoke up, pointing the knife at me vaguely. I am exploring opportunities. Don't make this about me. This is about you being a control freak. The point, Marlene interrupted, raising her voice to regain control, is that we have a plan, but there is a small administrative detail. She reached into her oversized purse and pulled out a folder. She slid it across the coffee table toward Simon. Since Brittany will be the primary caregiver transporting the children, Marlene said smoothly, and since there are certain state assistance programs that help single mothers with transportation costs if they own the vehicle, it makes the most sense to put the title of the new SUV in Brittany's name. My ears started to ring. Excuse me, I said. It is just paperwork. Claire, Brittany said quickly, her eyes wide and innocent. If the car is in my name, I can apply for the energy credit and the family transport subsidy. It saves us like $200 a month. That is smart money management. You are always telling me to be smart with money. So, let me get this straight, I said, walking slowly into the living room. You want me to trade in my car, my asset, use the equity I built to put a down payment on a truck I do not want, and then put the title in your name. So I would be paying the loan on a car I do not legally own. You are looking at it like a transaction, Marlene said, her voice dripping with disappointment. You need to look at it like a family unit. It is about maximizing benefits. And what happens if I stop paying? I asked. Or what happens if you decide to kick me out of your car? Brittany, I would never do that. Brittany gasped. I am your sister. You just threatened to sue me for child support because I bought generic peanut butter last week. I reminded her. That was a joke. It wasn't a joke, I said. I looked at Simon. Tell them no. Simon looked at the folder. He looked at Marlene, who was glaring at him with the weight of generations of judgment. He looked at Kyle, who was sneering. Claire, Simon whispered. Maybe we could look at the numbers if it saves $200 a month. Simon, I shouted. Come on, man. Kyle laughed. A low, ugly sound. Don't let her ball bust you in front of guests. It is a car. Sign the paper. Be the provider. Brittany needs a safe ride. She has a husband who calculates, Kyle continued, shaking his head at Simon. You got a wife who counts pennies. It is embarrassing. Bro, if I had your credit score, my woman would be driving a Cadillac. You don't have a credit score because you don't pay bills, I yelled at Kyle. Enough! Marlene slammed her hand down on the armrest. Dust motes danced in the light. We are not going to have a shouting match. We are going to make a decision. Simon, are you going to let your pregnant sister-in-law drive 5 children around in an unsafe manner, or are you going to do what is right? The room went silent. The air pressure dropped. They were all looking at Simon. They knew he was the weak point. They were prying at the cracks in my marriage with a crowbar. Simon looked at me. I stared back, and I knew my eyes were cold. If you sign anything, I said to him, my voice very low and very steady, if you agree to sell my car, Simon, you can sleep in it. Simon flinched. He looked back at Marlene. We can't do it right now. Marlene, we need to think about it. Think about it, Marlene scoffed. While you think, the deal might vanish. But fine, be indecisive. It fits. She stood up, brushing imaginary lint off her pants. I am disappointed. Claire, I really am. You have become hard. You have lost your way. I haven't lost my way, I said. I found my spine. Get out of my house. Marlene. This is my niece's house, too, she spat back. Actually, Pa, it is not, I said. Her name is not on the deed. Neither is yours. Good night. Marlene grabbed her purse. She marched to the door, Brittany trailing behind her like a kicked puppy, whispering apologies and shooting glaring daggers at me over her shoulder. Kyle just chuckled, stood up, and wandered into the kitchen to raid the fridge, completely unbothered by the civil war that had just occurred. Simon sat on the coffee table, his head in his hands. You didn't have to be so rude, he mumbled. They wanted to steal my car. Simon, I said. That wasn't a favor. It was a heist. I didn't wait for his answer. I turned and walked into the hallway. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I felt like I was being hunted. I needed to check the files. I went to the small alcove under the stairs where we kept the filing cabinet. It was an old metal thing, beige and dented. I kept the key on the top of the door frame. I reached up. The key was there. I unlocked the top drawer. At first glance, it looked normal. The hanging folders were green and aligned. Auto insurance. House deed, birth certificates, tax returns. I pulled out the folder marked Personal Docs. Claire. My passport was there. My social security card was there. My birth certificate was there. But something was wrong. I had a habit. It was a compulsion. Really. Whenever I put papers away, I always tapped them on the desk so they were perfectly flush. And I always put the social security card behind the birth certificate, face out. The social security card was in front, and it was upside down. Someone had taken it out. Someone had handled it, and they had put it back in a hurry. I checked Simon's folder. His papers were messy, but that was normal for Simon. I checked the folder marked Brittany. It was empty, obviously, because she never gave me her documents. I went back to my folder. I held my social security card up to the light. There was a tiny smudge on the corner, a grease stain, like someone had touched it after eating something oily, or after working on a car, or after eating fried chicken on the couch. I felt a wave of nausea. They hadn't just come for the car. The car was the distraction. The car was the loud noise they made while they were picking the lock on something else. I put the papers back, locked the cabinet, and put the key in my pocket. I wasn't leaving it on the doorframe anymore. I walked upstairs to the bedroom. I needed to know. I sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out my phone. I opened the credit monitoring app I had installed years ago but rarely checked because my credit had always been boringly perfect. 780, stable. I logged in. Face ID spun for a second that felt like an hour. The dashboard loaded. The score was there. It had dropped. Not by much. Just 15 points. But it was the alert banner at the top that made my hands shake. New inquiry detected. I tapped on it. Lender Quick Cash Auto Finance. Personal loans. Date yesterday. Status pending. They hadn't just tried to get me to sell the car. They had already applied for a loan. And they had done it using my information. I looked at the date again. Yesterday. While I was at work. While the house was empty. Or while I was distracted with the 5 lunchboxes and the missing permission slip. I remembered Brittany asking for my insurance card. "We look a lot alike," she had said. "We have the same last name, basically." She hadn't needed my insurance card for the doctor. She needed my information to complete the profile she was building. I heard footsteps on the stairs. Simon was coming up to bed. I turned off the phone screen and laid it face down on the nightstand. "Claire," he said from the doorway. He sounded exhausted. "I am sorry about Marlene. She can be intense." "It is fine," I lied. My voice sounded hollow to my own ears. "Are you coming to bed?" "In a minute," I said. "I just need to think." Simon turned off the main light and climbed into bed. Within 5 minutes, his breathing evened out into sleep. He could sleep. He thought the conflict was over because Marlene had left. I sat in the dark, staring at the glowing numbers of the alarm clock. They had crossed the line. They weren't just leeches anymore. They were predators. And I was the prey. I picked up my phone again and took a screenshot of the inquiry. Then I opened my email and sent it to a hidden folder I had named Recipes. The tears finally came, hot and silent, sliding down my face in the dark. I wasn't crying because I was sad. I was crying because I was grieving. I was grieving the sister I used to have, and the husband I thought I knew. And I was grieving the person I was about to become, because the Claire who made lunchboxes and paid electric bills was dead. The woman sitting in the dark now was someone else entirely, and she was about to burn the whole system down. The email arrived at 10:14 in the morning on a Wednesday. I was sitting at my desk at Hearthline, staring at a spreadsheet of shipping manifests that refused to balance, when the notification slid into the corner of my screen. It was from the credit monitoring service I had reactivated the night before. The subject line was benign, almost polite. New account activity detected. My heart did not race. My palms did not sweat. A strange glacial calm settled over me. The kind of detachment that comes when your worst fears stop being theories and become data points. I clicked the link. It was not a glitch. It was a hard inquiry, followed immediately by the opening of a new line of credit, a store card for a high-end baby boutique called the Gilded Cradle. The credit limit was $5,000. The current balance, less than 12 hours after the account was opened, was already $3,422. I minimized my work spreadsheet and opened a new browser window. I logged into the credit bureau's portal, my fingers moving across the keyboard with the precision of a pianist playing a funeral march. I navigated to the transaction history. It was a shopping spree. $300 for a designer diaper bag, $850 for a convertible car seat with Italian leather trim, $1,200 for a stroller system that looked more like a lunar rover than a device for transporting an infant, $400 for a bottle sterilizer that used UV light. I sat back in my ergonomic chair, the hum of the office fading into white noise. Brittany was not just preparing for a baby. She was curating a lifestyle. She was buying the things she felt she deserved, the things she believed were her birthright as a mother, and she was doing it with a credit card that bore my name. I looked at the shipping details. This was where the amateur hour usually ended and the real criminal intent began. The billing address was my house. That was standard. But the shipping address was different. It was not our front porch, where I might see the packages arrive. It was an Amazon hub locker at a gas station 4 blocks from our subdivision. They had thought this through. They planned to pick up the items in secret, stash them somewhere, maybe in the trunk of the car I was paying for, or in the basement where Mason slept, and then present them later as gifts from friends or findings from a clearance sale. It was a sophisticated logistics operation for 2 people who claimed they could not figure out how to pay an electric bill. I did not scream. I did not call Simon. I reached for my personal cell phone and dialed a number I had not used in 6 months. "Aaron Caldwell," a sharp voice answered on the second ring. Aaron was a paralegal at a corporate law firm downtown. We had gone to college together, and while I had drifted into logistics, she had sharpened herself into a human razor blade. She had no patience for sob stories, which was exactly why I needed her. "It is Claire," I said. "I need you to tell me exactly what constitutes identity theft in the state of Ohio." There was a pause, the sound of typing stopping on her end. "Hello to you too. That is a heavy opener. Who stole your identity?" "Some hacker in a basement in Eastern Europe." "No," I said, my voice flat. "My sister, and possibly my husband." "Okay," Aaron said. The professional tone clicked into place instantly. "Talk to me. Facts only. No feelings. A credit card was opened in my name yesterday. Over $3,000 in charges. Baby equipment. It is being shipped to a locker near my house. I did not authorize it. I did not sign for it." "Did you give them permission to use your information ever even once?" "I refused to sell my car for them 2 days ago," I said. "I told them the bank was closed, so they broke into the vault." "Claire," Aaron said, and her voice dropped an octave. "Listen to me very carefully. This is not a family dispute. This is fraud. This is a felony. In Ohio, identity fraud involving this amount of money is a 5th-degree felony, potentially 4th depending on the final tally. If you pay a single cent of that bill, or if you acknowledge the debt as yours to keep the peace, you are effectively authorizing the crime retroactively. You cannot be half pregnant with this. You are either a victim or you are an accomplice." "I know," I said. "Brittany is pregnant. Number 6. She is going to use that. She is going to say I am trying to send a pregnant mother to jail." "Let her say it," Aaron countered ruthlessly. "Her uterus is not a get-out-of-jail-free card. If you let this slide, Claire, they will not stop. They have tested the fence, and they found a hole. Next, it will be a personal loan, then a mortgage refinance. They will bleed you until you are a husk, and then they will blame you for not having enough blood." "What do I do?" "You go nuclear," Aaron said. "But you do it quietly. First, you freeze your credit at all 3 bureaus, TransUnion, Equifax, Experian. Do it now. Second, you file a police report. You do not need to press charges immediately if you are not ready, but you need the paper trail. You need an official record stating that these debts are not yours. Third, you gather evidence. Screenshots, IP addresses if you can get them, phone numbers linked to the account, everything. Do not confront them yet. If they know you know, they will destroy the evidence or gaslight you until you doubt your own name." "Okay," I said. "I can do that." "Claire," Aaron added, her voice softening just a fraction. "This is going to get ugly. They are going to hate you. They are going to tell everyone you are a monster. You need to decide right now if being the good sister is worth losing your financial existence." "The good sister is dead," I said. "She died when she saw the price of that stroller." "Good," Aaron said. "Welcome to the dark side. We have cookies, and we also have solvent bank accounts. Call me when you have the evidence." I hung up and went to work. I spent the next hour freezing my credit. It was a tedious process of answering security questions about streets I lived on 10 years ago and cars I owned in my 20s. When the final freeze was confirmed, I felt a grim satisfaction. The lock was on the door. Then I went back to the credit card application details. I needed to see the contact information they had used. They had used my name and my social security number. They had used my home address. but the email address was one I didn't recognize: clairebutlerofficial88@gmail.com. Note the misspelling of my name. It was lazy. And the phone number, it was not my number. It was not Brittany's primary number. It was not Kyle's number. It was a 614 area code, local to Columbus. I wrote the number down on a sticky note. 614-555-0192. I pulled out my cell phone. I hesitated for a second, then opened my contacts. I typed the number into the search bar. Nothing came up. I frowned. I opened the dialer and typed it in, just to see if I recognized the pattern. It looked familiar, but I couldn't place it. Then I had a thought that made my stomach turn over. I opened the text message thread with Simon. I scrolled back, way back, past the grocery lists, past the reminders to pick up the kids, past the rare "I love you" texts. 2 months ago. Simon Hay. My battery is dying. Call me on the burner if you need me. Kyle gave it to me for when I'm out with the truck. I stared at the screen. The number in the text message was the same. 614-555-0192. Kyle had given Simon a burner phone. Why did my husband, a man who worked in a warehouse and came home to watch History Channel documentaries, need a burner phone? And why was that phone number now attached to a fraudulent credit card, in my name? Possibilities raced through my mind, each one uglier than the last. Scenario A. Simon was in on it. He had conspired with them to steal my identity because he was too weak to say no to their demands for the SUV. Scenario B. Simon was an idiot. He had let them use the phone, or they had taken it without him knowing, and he was just a passive vehicle for their fraud. Scenario C. They had set him up. They used a phone linked to him so that if I did investigate, the trail would lead to my husband, forcing me to choose between prosecuting Brittany and prosecuting Simon. It was a trap, a sophisticated, emotional bear trap. I felt a vibration in my pocket. It was a text from Brittany. "Hey sis. Any chance you can pick up pizza for dinner? I am craving pepperoni, and my ankles are so swollen I can't stand to cook. Love you." The audacity was almost impressive. She was currently stealing thousands of dollars from me to buy Italian leather car seats, and she still wanted me to buy her a $20 pizza. I did not reply. I printed everything: the credit report, the transaction history, the email verification. I took a screenshot of the text from Simon with the phone number. I put everything into a manila folder. I left work early. I told my boss I had a family emergency. It was the truth. The emergency was that my family was a criminal enterprise. I did not go home. I drove to the gas station where the Amazon hub locker was located. I parked across the street, near a dry cleaner, and I waited. I checked the tracking number on the stroller order. Out for delivery. At 4:30 in the afternoon, a blue delivery van pulled up. The driver hopped out, scanned a package, and shoved it into one of the larger lockers. He did it 3 more times. The locker bank was filling up with my stolen credit. I waited. 20 minutes later, a beat-up sedan pulled into the gas station. It was not Kyle's car. Kyle didn't have a car. It was a friend of his, a guy named Eager Dave, who sometimes slept on our couch when he fought with his girlfriend. The passenger door opened. Kyle stepped out. He was wearing sunglasses, looking around with a casualness that screamed guilt. He walked up to the locker. He looked at his phone, presumably checking the code sent to the burner number, and punched it in. The locker door popped open. Kyle grinned. He reached in and dragged out the huge box containing the stroller system. He lugged it back to Dave's car and shoved it into the back seat. I raised my phone and snapped a series of photos. Kyle at the locker, Kyle with the box, the license plate of Dave's car. I had them. I watched them drive away, heading back toward my house. They were going to stash the loot. They were probably laughing about how easy it was. "Claire is so stupid." They would say, "She works so hard, and we just take what we want." I started my car, but I didn't put it in gear. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. For 3 years, I had told myself that I was doing this for the kids. I told myself that family was about sacrifice. I told myself that if I just gave a little more, worked a little harder, tolerated a little more chaos, eventually they would get on their feet. I had been wrong. You cannot fill a cup that has no bottom. You cannot save people who are actively drilling holes in the lifeboat. I looked at the manila folder on the passenger seat. It was thick with evidence. It was a weapon. I thought about Simon, the phone number. The betrayal hurt more than the money. If he was part of this, if he had chosen them over me, then there was nothing left to save. "Okay," I said aloud to the empty car. My voice was steady. It sounded like the voice of a stranger. "You want to play house? Let's play." I put the car in drive. I wasn't going home to make dinner. I wasn't going home to argue. I was going home to perform an audit. And if the books didn't balance, I was going to liquidate the assets. I drove past the turn for my subdivision and headed toward the police station. I needed one more piece of paper before I went home. I needed a case number. Because Erin was right. The good sister was dead, and the woman who replaced her was about to file a report that would shatter the world. The email that could save my life arrived on a Thursday afternoon, buried between a coupon for hearing aid batteries and a spam message about car warranties. It was from Bright Harbor Systems Group. The subject line was simple: interview invitation, senior operations analyst. I stared at the screen. The salary range for this position was nearly 40% higher than what I was making at Hearthline. It was not just a raise, it was an escape hatch. With that kind of money, I could pay off the credit card debt Brittany had racked up in my name while the fraud investigation processed. I could afford a lawyer who didn't just give advice over the phone. I could afford to leave. I felt a surge of hope so violent it almost made me dizzy. That night, I made the mistake of sharing it. I was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for a stir-fry because rice and frozen peas were cheap. Simon was standing at the sink, washing the lunchboxes I had packed 12 hours earlier. The air between us was still thin and brittle after the car argument. But I needed to tell someone. I needed him to know there was a way out. "I got an interview," I said, keeping my voice low so it wouldn't carry to the living room where Kyle was loudly explaining a conspiracy theory to the television. "Bright Harbor, the logistics firm downtown." Simon stopped scrubbing. He looked at me, water dripping from his rubber gloves. "The big one. The one with the government contracts." "Yes," I said. "The base pay is huge. Simon, if I get this, we can clear the debt. We can fix the credit score damage. We can breathe." I expected him to smile. I expected him to hug me. Instead, his face clouded over with a familiar anxiety. He glanced toward the living room doorway. "That is great. Claire, really, but—" He lowered his voice to a whisper. "If you make that kind of money, Brittany is going to know. She smells cash like a shark smells blood. If you break out, if you get free, they are just going to grab your ankles and pull us back down. Maybe we should keep it quiet." "I am not keeping it quiet because I'm scared of my sister," I said, slicing a carrot with a little too much force. "And Simon, listen to me. If I don't break out, we drown. We are taking on water faster than we can bail. This isn't a luxury, it is a life raft." He nodded, looking defeated. "Okay, when is it?" "Monday morning, 9 a.m. It is a video call. I need the house to be dead silent." I didn't notice that my phone was plugged into the charging station on the counter behind me, and I didn't notice that Brittany had walked in quietly to grab a soda while we were talking. She didn't say anything. She just unplugged her phone, plugged in mine to check the battery, and stood there for a long moment while Simon and I stared at each other. When she turned around, she was smiling. It was a tight, small smile. "Stir-fry again? Yum." She walked out. Sunday night. I prepared like a general on the eve of D-Day. I ironed my best blazer. I set up my laptop on the desk in the guest room, the room Brittany had claimed, but which I reclaimed for 1 hour under the threat of eviction. I tested the webcam. I tested the microphone. I tested the Wi-Fi speed. Everything was green. Everything was perfect. I went to sleep feeling a strange, terrified optimism. Monday morning, 8:30, 30 minutes to launch. I walked into the guest room with my coffee. I sat down and opened my laptop. I typed in my password. Incorrect password. I frowned. I typed it again. Slower this time. Incorrect password. My pulse kicked up a notch. I knew my password. I had used the same variation of my first pet's name and a graduation year for a decade. I tried a third time. Account locked. Please contact administrator. What on earth? I whispered. I grabbed my phone to check my email, thinking maybe I could reset it from there. But when I looked at the Wi-Fi icon in the top corner of my phone screen, it was gone. I was on LTE data. I opened the Wi-Fi settings. The network name, Butler Home, was gone. In its place was a new network named FBI_surveillance_van_4, a joke name Kyle had used for his hotspot years ago. I ran downstairs. The router was in the living room, behind the TV stand. The router was unplugged. Not just unplugged from the wall, but the Ethernet cable had been yanked out, and the reset button, the tiny one you need a paperclip to press, looked like it had been jammed in. Brittany was in the kitchen, eating a bowl of cereal. She didn't look up. "Internet is down," she said casually. "Kyle tried to fix it earlier. He thought it was lagging. I think he might have pressed the wrong button. Oops. You changed my laptop password," I said, my voice shaking. It wasn't a question. "I don't know what you are talking about," she said, slurping milk. "Maybe you forgot it. Pregnancy brain is contagious. They say—" I looked at the clock on the microwave. 8:42. I didn't have time to kill her. I grabbed my keys and my laptop. I ran out the door. The nearest place with reliable Wi-Fi was a coffee shop called the Bean Counter. 6 minutes away. I drove like a stuntman, running a yellow light that was definitely turning red. I parked on the sidewalk, not caring about the ticket. I burst into the shop. It was packed. The espresso machine was screaming. A baby was crying in the corner. I found a tiny table near the back. Wedged between the bathroom door and a stack of flour sacks, I opened my laptop. It was still locked. I couldn't use it. I grabbed my phone. I propped it up against a napkin holder. I downloaded the video conferencing app over my data connection, watching the progress bar crawl. 8:58. Installed. I joined the meeting. My face popped up on the screen, flushed and frantic, illuminated by the harsh fluorescent lights of the cafe. 2 seconds later, the interviewer appeared. A woman named Sarah with sleek glasses and a background that looked like a quiet, organized library. "Claire?" she asked, looking confused. "Is this a bad time? You seem to be in a cafe." "I apologize. Sarah," I said, forcing my breathing to slow. I channeled every ounce of operational crisis management I had learned in 10 years of logistics. "We had a catastrophic power failure at my home office 3 minutes before the call. Rather than reschedule and waste your time, I relocated to the nearest connectivity point. I believe in solving problems, not making excuses." Sarah blinked. Then she smiled. "Well, that is certainly an operations mindset. Can you hear me clearly?" "Loud and clear," I lied, as the milk steamer shrieked like a banshee 3 feet away. The interview lasted 45 minutes. I sweated through my blazer. I had to mute myself every time the barista shouted a name. But I nailed it. I answered every question with the precision of a woman who had nothing left to lose. When I signed off, Sarah looked impressed. "We will be in touch. Claire, I admire your tenacity." I closed my eyes and slumped against the hard wooden chair. I had done it. They had tried to sabotage me, and I had vaulted over the wreckage. I drove home slowly. I needed the adrenaline to fade before I faced them. When I walked in, the house was suspicious. Quiet. The router was plugged back in. The admin password had been reset to the factory default on the sticker. They were covering their tracks. I didn't say a word to Brittany. I went upstairs, used my phone to research how to hack back into my own laptop using the command prompt in recovery mode, a trick I remembered from college and regained access. Then I checked my email. There was a message from Sarah, the interviewer. My stomach dropped. "Claire, thank you for your time today. However, shortly after our call, Our HR department received a rather concerning external email regarding your candidacy. It alleges a history of workplace instability due to unresolved domestic legal issues. We take character references seriously. I wanted to give you a chance to explain before we close the file. I felt the blood drain from my face. They hadn't just attacked the hardware, they had attacked the reputation. I replied immediately. Sarah, I am currently the victim of identity theft and familial harassment, which is documented in Active Police Report number 202649. The email you received is a retaliation tactic because I am cooperating with authorities. I can provide the case number and legal documentation within the hour. Please do not let a criminal act dictate your hiring decision. I hit send. Then I stood up. I walked downstairs. Simon was in the garage, hiding. He was pretending to organize his tool bench. Simon, I said. He jumped. He wouldn't meet my eyes. How did she get into my laptop? I asked. I changed that password last week. It wasn't written down anywhere. Simon picked up a screwdriver and put it down. He picked it up again. I don't know. Don't lie to me, I said. Not now. Not today. He crumbled. He slumped against the workbench, looking like a man whose soul had been slowly leaking out for years. Remember the cloud account, he whispered. The one we set up for the mortgage documents 3 years ago? The one that syncs with your laptop login? I froze. Yes. I gave Brittany the password to it last year, he confessed. She said she needed to upload some photos of the kids for a Christmas calendar she was making for you, and I forgot to change it. You gave her the admin access, I said, my voice trembling with rage. You gave her the keys to my digital life, and you never told me. I didn't think she would use it for this, Simon pleaded. I thought she just wanted to share photos. She used it to lock me out of my computer on the day of the biggest interview of my career, I said. And then she used the information in my sent folder to email the recruiter and smear me. Simon looked horrified. She emailed the recruiter. Yes, I looked at my husband. He wasn't malicious. He wasn't evil. He was just criminally soft, and his softness was killing me. Simon, I said, look at me. He looked up. His eyes were wet. This is the end of the line, I said. I am not asking you to divorce me. I am not asking you to move out today. But I am telling you this. You are either my husband or you are her enabler. You cannot be both. If you ever give her access to anything of mine again, if you ever take her side against me in this house again, I will leave you, and I won't just leave. I will sue you for facilitation of fraud. Claire, I am serious. Simon, I am building a wall. You are either inside it with me, or you are outside with them. He nodded slowly. I am with you, I promise. I will change all the passwords. I will lock the router. Good, I said. Start now. I went back upstairs. I didn't cry. I was done crying. 2 days later, on Wednesday, I was sitting in my car in the company parking lot at lunch. My phone buzzed. It was an email from Sarah at Bright Harbor. Claire, thank you for the documentation. Our legal team reviewed the police report. We appreciate your transparency. We believe talent speaks louder than sabotage. We would like to offer you the position. The formal offer packet has been mailed to your home address as per policy for background check verification. Welcome aboard. I screamed, a loud, primal scream of victory. I banged my hands on the steering wheel. I had won. I had beaten them. I drove home that evening feeling like I was floating. I walked into the house with my head high. Brittany was on the couch, watching a reality show. She didn't look at me. She looked sullen. Good. I went to the mailbox at the end of the driveway. It was empty. That was strange. Sarah said the packet was mailed priority. It should have been there. I checked the Informed Delivery app on my phone, the service from the post office that shows you scans of your incoming mail. There was a scan from this morning, a large, thick envelope from Bright Harbor Systems Group. It had been delivered. I walked back into the house. Brittany, I said, did you bring in the mail? No, she said, not looking away from the TV. I haven't been outside all day. My ankles hurt. Kyle? "He is out," she said. I went to the kitchen table. Nothing. I checked the recycling bin. Nothing. I felt a cold prickle of dread. I opened the Postal Service app again. I went deeper into the settings. User profile. Forwarding addresses. There was a new entry, active as of yesterday. Household mail forwarding. From my address to a P.O. box in downtown Columbus. Authorized by B. Shaw. She hadn't stolen the mail from the box. She had diverted the entire river. She had used the utility bill, the one I paid, but she had access to the physical copy of to prove residency and redirect my mail to a box she controlled. My offer letter, my new contract, my exit strategy. It was sitting in a metal box 5 miles away, and she had the only key. I looked at her. She was smirking at the TV, a tiny, satisfied curl of her lip. She didn't know I knew. She just knew that I hadn't come in holding a big envelope, and that was enough for her. I didn't yell. I didn't explode. I walked into the kitchen, picked up my phone, and called Aaron. "They intercepted the offer letter," I said. "That is a federal crime," Aaron said instantly. "Tampering with mail. That is not a felony. Claire, that is a federal felony. The postal inspectors do not play games." "I know," I said. "Do you want me to call the inspector?" Aaron asked. I looked at Brittany's back. I looked at the baby bump she was rubbing absent-mindedly. "Not yet," I said. "I want her to open it. I want her fingerprints on the seal. I want her to keep it long enough that she can't claim it was an accident." "That is cold," Aaron said. "I like it. I am going to get that job." "Aaron," I said, "and then I am going to use the first paycheck to buy a padlock for every door in my life." The decision to leave was not a thunderclap. It was a spreadsheet. After I confirmed Brittany had diverted my mail, I did not storm into the living room. I did not flip tables. I went upstairs, locked the bathroom door, and opened a new browser tab in incognito mode. I was no longer a sister or a wife. I was an asset recovery team of one. The first step was financial quarantine. I opened a checking account at a completely different bank, one that had no branches within 20 miles of our neighborhood. I set up a direct deposit for 70% of my paycheck to hit this new account starting the next pay cycle. The remaining 30% would go to the joint account, just enough to keep the mortgage autopay from bouncing and alerting them too early. Then came the digital fortress. I enabled 2-factor authentication on everything: email, bank, retirement, social media, but I didn't send the codes to my phone. I knew Brittany had eyes on my screen when I wasn't looking, and Simon's burner phone was compromised. I bought a cheap, prepaid flip phone at a drugstore for $30 and used that number solely for verification codes. I hid it inside a hollowed-out box of tampons under the sink, the one place I knew Kyle would never look and Brittany, being pregnant, had no use for. I changed my passwords to passphrases. Blue chair became the blue chair sits in winter 99. I logged out of every device. I watched the list of active sessions on my Google account vanish one by one until only my current device remained. It felt like turning off the lights in a house full of intruders. Next was the physical extraction. I couldn't just call a moving truck. If Brittany saw a U-Haul, she would stage a medical emergency before the driver put the truck in park. I had to move out like a ghost. I rented a 5x10 storage unit at a facility called Secure Store, 3 towns over. It was a depressing concrete box that smelled of damp cardboard and old tires, but it had a padlock that only I knew the combination to. For 5 days, I ran a covert operation from my own hallway. Every morning, I left for work carrying my usual tote bag and a large reusable grocery sack. In the sack, underneath a layer of gym clothes, were my tax returns, my birth certificate, the deed to the house, or at least my copy of it, my jewelry box. I did not take the photo albums. I did not take the quilt my grandmother made me. I did not take the framed picture of Simon and me from our wedding day. To take those things was to admit I was never coming back, and that emotional weight would make my hands shake. I needed steady hands. I left the sentimental items as decoys, as long as the home things were there. They wouldn't notice the life things were gone. Aaron was my handler. We met on her lunch break in her car to exchange documents. She handed me a thick folder. "This is the war binder," she said, tapping the cover. "Inside is a draft of the identity theft affidavit, the cease and desist for Brittany, the fraud alert confirmations, and a timeline of events." "It feels heavy," I said, weighing it in my hands. "It is heavy," Aaron replied. "It is the weight of your freedom. Now, listen to me. When you go, you go. No last-minute conversations, no closure. You are not ending a relationship. You are fleeing a crime scene." "I know," I said. "And Simon?" she asked. I looked out the window. "I am working on it." That night, I cornered Simon in the garage. He was staring at the wall, looking like a man who had aged 10 years in 10 days. "I am leaving. Simon," I said. I didn't whisper. The garage door was closed. He turned slowly. He didn't look surprised. "When Friday night, late. I want to go with you," he said. His voice cracked. "I can't stay here with them. Not after what they did to you. Not after the laptop." I looked at him. I loved him. I really did. But love was no longer a currency I could accept without verification. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a single sheet of paper. I had typed it up at work. "This is not a separation agreement," I said, handing it to him. "This is a condition of entry. If you come with me, you sign this." Simon took the paper. He read it under the buzzing fluorescent light. It was brutal in its simplicity. Clause 1. Total financial transparency. No hidden accounts. No cash withdrawals over $50 without a receipt. Clause 2.0. Contact with Brittany Shaw or Kyle Mercer regarding financial assistance. Clause 3. Any breach of these terms results in immediate separation. "You want me to sign a contract to be your husband?" he asked quietly. "No," I said. "I want you to sign a contract to stop being their ATM. I need to know that if I drag you into the lifeboat, you are not going to punch a hole in the floor to let them in." Simon looked at the paper for a long time. Then he walked over to his workbench, picked up a pen, and signed it. He handed it back to me. His hand was shaking, but his signature was clear. "I am sorry," he said. "Don't be sorry," I said, folding the paper and putting it in my pocket. "Be ready. Friday at 2 a.m. Pack only what fits in 2 black trash bags. We are taking the trash out." Thursday night, the house was quiet. Too quiet. The tension was a physical thing, like ozone before a storm. I was in the kitchen, double-checking the locks, when I heard a noise behind me. I spun around. It was Mason. My 17-year-old nephew was leaning against the refrigerator. He was tall, gangly, with hair that hung over his eyes. He usually communicated in grunts and shrugs. I hadn't had a real conversation with him in 2 years. "You're bouncing," he said. It wasn't a question. I froze. "What?" "You're leaving," he clarified. "I saw the gap in the bookshelf where your binders used to be. I saw you take the jewelry box on Tuesday." I didn't deny it. Mason was smarter than any of them gave him credit for. He was the invisible observer in a house of loud narcissists. "Are you going to tell her?" I asked. Mason shook his head. He reached into the pocket of his hoodie and pulled out a small, spiraled notebook. The cover was worn and peeling. He slid it across the island counter toward me. "Take it," he said. "What is this insurance?" Mason said. "I write things down. Mom, she talks when she thinks we aren't listening, or when she is on the phone with Aunt Marlene." I opened the notebook. The handwriting was small and cramped. January 12th. Mom told Kyle to use Aunt Claire's social for the electric bill. Said she wouldn't notice. January 15th. Mom practiced her crying voice in the mirror before asking Simon for money. January 20th. Kyle sold the PlayStation Simon bought us for Christmas. Told Mom it was stolen. Mom knew. They split the cash. I felt sick. It was a logbook of betrayal. "Why are you giving me this?" I asked, looking up at him. "Because she is planning something," Mason said. His voice was flat. devoid of emotion, which made it terrifying. I heard her talking to Marlene yesterday. When you leave and she knows you might leave, she isn't going to say it was about money. She is going to say you left because you were having an affair. I stared at him. What? That is the narrative, Mason said, using a word that felt too old for him. She is going to say you abandoned the family to run off with some guy. She is going to play the abandoned pregnant sister. She thinks it will make Simon stay, or at least make the family hate you so much you have to come back and pay to fix your reputation. The cruelty was breathtaking. It was strategic brilliance applied to emotional destruction. Mason, I said, come with us. He smiled. A sad, crooked thing. No, I have 6 months until I am 18. If I leave now, she will call the cops and report me as a runaway. She will drag you into a kidnapping charge. I have to wait. He pushed off the fridge. Go, Aunt Claire. Seriously, if you stay, she will eat you alive, and I don't want to watch that anymore. He turned and walked back to the basement, disappearing into the dark. I stood there, clutching the notebook. It was the most valuable thing I owned. It was the proof that I wasn't crazy. Friday night, 2:15 in the morning. The house was silent. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. I was dressed in dark jeans and a black hoodie. I had 2 heavy-duty trash bags at my feet. Inside were my clothes, my laptop, my toiletries, and the last of my essential paperwork. Simon met me in the hallway. He was carrying 2 bags of his own. He looked pale in the moonlight filtering through the window. We moved like burglars in our own home. We didn't wear shoes. We carried them. We stepped over the squeaky board on the 3rd step. We navigated the living room where Kyle was asleep on the couch, mouth open, the blue light of the TV flickering over his face. We reached the back door. I stopped. I had one last thing to do. I took an envelope out of my pocket and placed it on the kitchen table, propped up against the fruit bowl. It was not a long letter. It did not explain my feelings. It did not apologize. Brittany, we are gone. Do not call us. Do not text us. Do not come to work to find me. Any attempt to contact us will be considered harassment and forwarded to the police, to add to case number 2-02649. We have retained legal counsel. All communication regarding the house, the bills, and the debts you incurred in my name goes through Aaron Caldwell at Caldwell Associates. The free ride is over. The bank is closed. Claire. I stared at the letter. It felt like leaving a grenade with the pin pulled. I opened the back door. The cold night air hit me like a slap. We walked out. We didn't take my car from the driveway that would wake them up. I had parked my car 3 blocks away, behind the community center. Earlier that evening, we carried the trash bags down the street, walking in the shadows of the neighbors' hedges. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. I flinched. Simon reached out and took my hand. His grip was tight, desperate. We reached the car. I popped the trunk and threw the bags in. It looked exactly like we were dumping garbage. In a way, we were dumping the garbage of 3 years of toxicity. I got in the driver's seat. Simon got in the passenger side. I didn't turn on the headlights until we were out of the subdivision. I drove. I didn't look back at the house. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. We drove for 2 hours, crossing the state line into Cincinnati. I had rented a short-term corporate apartment there. It was small, sterile, and expensive. It cost $2,000 a month. When we walked in, it smelled of cleaning products and nothingness. There were no toys on the floor. There was no smell of stale cigarettes. There was no looming threat of a crisis. I dropped my bag on the floor. Simon sat on the edge of the beige sofa. "We did it," he whispered. "We actually left." I walked to the window and looked out at the city lights of Cincinnati. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't happiness. Happiness was too light a word. It was the feeling of a heavy pack being lifted off my shoulders after a 10-mile hike. My muscles still ached. The phantom weight was still there, but I could stand up straight. I thought about Mason back in that basement. I thought about the lie Brittany was probably already crafting in her sleep. I thought about the thousands of dollars of debt attached to my name, but then I listened. Silence. No screaming. No demands. No guilt trips. "It is quiet," Simon said, echoing my thoughts. "Yes," I said, turning away from the window. "It is expensive silence, but I think it is the best thing I have ever bought." I went to the door and engaged the deadbolt. Click, then the chain. Slide. For the first time in 3 years, the lock was on my side of the door. It had been exactly 38 hours since we fled Columbus. The silence in our corporate apartment in Cincinnati was heavy, but it was a clean kind of heavy. It was the weight of a blank slate. It was Sunday morning. The sun was trying to push through the gray Ohio clouds, casting a pale light over the rental furniture that smelled of lemon polish and anonymity. Simon and I were drinking coffee. Real coffee. Not the instant sludge we usually drank because Brittany had used the last of the beans. We were sitting at the small glass dining table, going over the lease agreement for the apartment. We hadn't turned on the television. We hadn't checked our old social media accounts. We were in a bubble. Then, the bubble popped. It started with a heavy, authoritative pounding on the door. Not a knock, a pound, the kind of sound that demands entry, not permission. Simon dropped his spoon. It clattered loudly against his ceramic mug. He looked at me, his eyes wide with a trauma response that had been conditioned over 3 years of living in a war zone. "Are we expecting anyone?" he whispered. "No," I said. My pulse spiked, but my mind stayed cold. I stood up and walked to the door. I looked through the peephole. I saw dark blue uniforms, badges, and standing just behind the 2 officers, looking like a tragic heroine on the cover of a romance novel, was Brittany. She was wearing a maternity sweater that was 2 sizes too big, hugging her stomach as if she were protecting the heir to a kingdom. Her hair was messy, deliberately so. Her face was blotchy, likely from staged crying. "Police!" the officer shouted. "Open up!" I took a deep breath. I unlocked the deadbolt. I unlocked the chain. I opened the door. "Ms. Claire Butler?" the older officer asked. He looked tired. He had the face of a man who had dealt with too many domestic disputes on a Sunday morning. His name tag read, "Officer Miller." "That is me," I said calmly. "We have a report of grand larceny and theft of sensitive documents filed against you," Miller said. "And we have the complainant here who states you fled the jurisdiction with family heirlooms and a significant amount of cash." Brittany lunged forward from behind him. She didn't look at me. She looked past me, performing for the invisible audience of the neighbors who were starting to peek out of their doors. "She took it," Brittany wailed. Her voice was a perfect pitch of hysteria. "She took Grandma's diamond ring and the emergency cash I was saving for the baby. She took everything and ran away." I looked at her. It was a marvelous performance. If I hadn't been the one she was destroying, I might have applauded. "I did not take any ring," I said to the officer. "We don't even have a family heirloom ring. Our grandmother was a factory worker who wore a plain silver band." "She is lying," Brittany screamed. "She is jealous because I am pregnant. She wants to ruin me, officer. Please, you have to search the place. It is in there. I know it is." Officer Miller looked at me. "Ma'am, can we come in? We can resolve this quickly if you just let us take a look. If the property isn't here, we can clear this up. Do you have a warrant?" I asked. "Claire," Brittany shrieked. "Just let them in. Stop hiding. God, why are you doing this to me?" "We don't have a warrant yet," the second officer, a younger man named Officer Davis, said, "but given the exigent circumstances and the claim that you are flight risks." "Come in," I said. Stepping aside, it was a gamble, but a calculated one. I knew what was in the apartment: 2 suitcases of clothes, 1 laptop, and a folder of evidence against the woman standing in the hallway. The officers stepped inside. Brittany tried to follow them, but Officer Davis held up a hand. "You stay in the hall, ma'am." "But she is my sister," Brittany sobbed. "I need to make sure she doesn't hide it." "Stay in the hall," Davis repeated, his voice firmer. They walked into the living room. Simon was standing by the table. He looked terrified, but he was standing up. That was an improvement. "Who is this Officer Miller asked. My husband, Simon Lowe, I said. He is the accomplice, Brittany shouted from the doorway. He helped her pack the car. He is brainwashed. Miller looked around the apartment. It was stark. There were no piles of cash. There were no jewelry boxes. There was just the laptop on the table and the folder I had been reviewing with Aaron. Speaking of Aaron, there was a knock on the open door frame. Good morning, officers, a sharp voice cut through Brittany's sobbing. Aaron Caldwell stepped out of the elevator and walked past Brittany as if my sister were a piece of furniture. Aaron was wearing a blazer on a Sunday. She carried a briefcase that looked like it could stop a bullet. Who are you? Officer Davis asked. I am Aaron Caldwell, legal counsel for Ms. Butler and Mr. Lowe, Aaron said, stepping into the apartment and handing Miller a business card. I was scheduled to meet my clients here at 10 a.m. to review their filing for identity theft. I assume that is why you are here to take the report on Ms. Shaw. She pointed a manicured finger at Brittany, who was still hovering in the hallway. Brittany froze. The sobbing stopped instantly. What no? They robbed me. Officers, Aaron said, her voice cool and authoritative. My client is currently the victim of a documented case of identity fraud. Case number 2-02649, filed with the Columbus Police Department 3 days ago. Ms. Shaw, the woman in your hallway, is the primary suspect. Miller looked at the card, then at me, then at the screaming woman in the hall. She said you stole a diamond ring and $5,000. Brittany, Simon spoke up. The room went silent. We all turned to him. Simon was shaking, but his hands were balled into fists at his sides. He looked at Brittany, really looked at her, for the first time in years without the filter of guilt. There is no ring, Simon said. His voice was steady. There never was, and there is no $5,000. You asked me for $20 for gas on Tuesday because you were broke. Where would you get $5,000 to be stolen? You shut up, Simon, Brittany hissed. The mask of the victim slipped, revealing the predator underneath. You are pathetic. She has you on a leash. He is telling the truth, I said to Miller. Officer, look around. Does it look like we are sitting on a pile of loot? We are hiding from her financial abuse. Erin opened her briefcase on the dining table. She didn't ask for permission. She just laid out the timeline. Here is the credit report showing the fraudulent accounts opened in Miss Butler's name, Erin narrated, pointing to the highlighted rows. Here is the mail forwarding request Ms. Shaw filed illegally to intercept my client's employment contract, and here is the affidavit from the bank regarding the unauthorized inquiries. Officer Miller leaned over the table. He was an experienced cop. He knew the difference between a domestic squabble and a paper trail. He saw the dates. He saw the police report number I had filed. He looked back at the door. Brittany was pacing now, looking nervous. She is lying, Brittany yelled, but the volume was lower. She was losing the room. Those are fake papers. She works in logistics. She knows how to print things. Officer, I said, I have one more thing. My phone buzzed on the table. It was an email notification. Sender Mason Shaw. Subject proof. My heart hammered. Mason had come through. I didn't know how he knew the police were here. Maybe Brittany had called him to brag. Or maybe he was just always listening, but the timing was impeccable. Officer, I said, my nephew, Brittany's son, just sent me a video file. I think you should watch it. I opened the email. I clicked the attachment. I turned the phone volume up to maximum and held it out so Miller and Davis could see. The video was shaky, filmed from a low angle, likely a phone propped up on a counter or hidden in a pocket. The timestamp was from yesterday afternoon. On the screen, Brittany was sitting at my kitchen table, the table I had paid for. She was talking on the phone. She was laughing. No, Marlene, don't worry about it. Brittany's voice, tinny but clear, coming from the speaker. I called the cops. I told them she took Grandma's ring. Yeah, the one that doesn't exist. Who cares? They will drag her back here. She is terrified of authority. As soon as the cops knock on her door, she will come running back and pay off the credit cards just to make it go away. It is easy. She is weak. She took a sip of soda and burped. And if Simon tries to talk, I will just tell everyone he hit me. He won't do anything. He is a coward." The video ended. The silence in the apartment was absolute. Officer Miller stood up slowly. His face had changed. The tiredness was gone, replaced by the hard, cold look of a law enforcement officer who realizes he has been played. He walked to the door. Brittany was standing there, looking smug. She hadn't heard the video. She thought the silence meant I was confessing. "Did you find it?" she asked eagerly. "Did you find the ring, Ms. Shaw?" Officer Miller said. His voice was dangerously low. "You need to step inside." "See?" she beamed, stepping into the living room. "I told you, they are thieves." "Ms. Shaw," Miller continued, "filing a false police report is a first-degree misdemeanor in Ohio. Attempting to frame someone for a felony theft is a much more serious matter. And extortion, that is a felony." Brittany's smile vanished. "What? We just watched a video of you admitting to fabricating this entire story," Miller said, "admitting to the ring being fake. Admitting to planning to coerce Ms. Butler into paying debts." Brittany's eyes darted around the room. She looked at the phone in my hand. She looked at Simon. She looked at Aaron. "That is out of context," she stammered. "I was acting for a TikTok. It was a skit." "It didn't look like a skit," Officer Davis said, stepping up beside his partner. "It looked like a confession." "You can't arrest me," Brittany shouted, clutching her stomach. "I am pregnant. I am high risk if you touch me. I will sue the department. I will lose the baby." It was her trump card. She threw it down with the confidence of someone who had used it 1,000 times. Officer Miller hesitated. He looked at her stomach. He knew the paperwork involved in arresting a visibly pregnant woman who claimed medical distress. It was a nightmare. "We aren't arresting you right now," Miller said, and I saw the relief wash over Brittany's face. "But we are forwarding this report to the prosecutor. We are filing an incident report for false information, and we are advising you to leave this property immediately. If you contact Ms. Butler or Mr. Lowe again, we will charge you with harassment," Brittany sneered. She realized she wasn't going to jail in handcuffs. Her confidence rebounded instantly. She turned to Simon. "Simon," she pleaded, changing tactics in a split second. Her voice became soft, trembling. "Simon, look at what they are doing to me. They are trying to put your pregnant sister-in-law in jail. You promised my mother you would look out for me. Are you really going to let Claire do this? She is crazy. Simon, she is vindictive. Come home. We miss you. The kids miss you." It was a heat-seeking missile aimed right at his guilt. Simon looked at her. He looked at the woman who had lived in his house for 3 years, who had eaten his food and spent his money and called him a coward on video. "The kids miss me," Simon repeated quietly. "Or do you miss having someone to take out the trash?" "Simon," she cried, reaching for his hand. He took a step back. "Don't touch me," he said. "And don't talk about the kids. If you cared about the kids, you wouldn't be spending their food money on designer strollers." "I am their mother," she screamed. "Then start acting like it." Simon said, "Get out." Brittany stared at him. She looked at me. Her eyes were pure venom. "This isn't over," she hissed at me. "You think you won. You think you can just walk away. You are going to pay for this. I will tell everyone. I will tell the church. I will tell your boss." "My boss already knows," I said calmly. "And the church can read the police report." Officer Miller stepped forward. "Ms. Shaw, now." Brittany turned and stomped out of the apartment. We heard her screaming obscenities in the hallway, the sound echoing off the walls until the elevator doors dinged and swallowed her noise. Officer Miller turned back to us. He looked exhausted again. "I am sorry for the disturbance, folks," he said. "We will file the report. Send a copy of that video to the precinct email." "We will," Aaron said. "And we will be filing for a civil protection order in the morning." "Good idea," Miller said. He looked at Simon. "Good luck, son. You are going to need it." The officers left. The door clicked shut. The silence returned. But this time, it felt different. It wasn't empty. It was electric. I looked at Simon. He was leaning against the wall, breathing hard, his face pale. "You okay?" I asked. He looked at his hands. "She called me a coward." "She called you a lot of things," I said. "She was right," he whispered. "I was a coward, for a long time." He looked up at me. "But I didn't go with her." "No," I said, walking over and putting a hand on his arm. "You didn't—" Erin cleared her throat, closing her briefcase with a sharp snap. "All right, that was fun," she said dryly. "But let's be clear. She is cornered, and a cornered rat doesn't stop fighting. It just bites harder. She is going to escalate. She is going to try to hit you financially, socially, and emotionally." "I know," I said. "She mentioned the kids," Erin said. "That is her next play. She is going to weaponize access to those children. She knows you raised them. She knows it hurts you to be cut off." I walked to the window and looked down at the street. I saw a police cruiser pulling away. I didn't see Brittany, but I knew she was out there, plotting her next move. "Let her try," I said. "I have the notebook, I have the video, and for the first time in my life, I have a lawyer who scares me more than my sister does." Erin smiled. It was a shark smile. "That is the nicest thing anyone has ever said to me." "We aren't done." "Are we?" Simon asked. "No," I said, turning back to face the room. "We are just getting to the part where we stop defending and start prosecuting. She wanted a war. She just realized she brought a knife to a drone strike. The laws of physics apply to finance just as they apply to nature. When a vacuum is created, something rushes in to fill it. In my sister's house, the vacuum was the sudden, total absence of my income, and what rushed in to fill it was not resourcefulness, or humility, or a sudden work ethic. What rushed in was chaos. For 3 years, I had been the invisible, load-bearing wall of that household. I was the reason the lights stayed on. I was the reason the pantry had boxes of cereal. I was the reason the internet connected so Kyle could ignore his children in high definition. When Simon and I walked out that door with our trash bags, we didn't just leave a house. We removed the foundation. The collapse took exactly 3 weeks. It started with the silence in my new apartment, which was a stark contrast to the noise I knew was happening back in Columbus. But thanks to the miracle of modern digital banking and the network of gossiping relatives, I had a front-row seat to the implosion. The first domino to fall was the rent. Brittany had never paid rent. She assumed that because the lease was in her name, a rare moment of her asserting independence 3 years ago, she was the owner. But I was the one who wrote the check every month. When the first of the month came and went, the landlord, a patient man named Mr. Henderson, did not call me. He called her. I heard about it from my cousin Jessica, who was one of the few family members who hadn't drunk Marlene's Kool-Aid. "She is losing her mind," Jessica whispered to me over the phone one evening. "She called me asking for $1,200. She said the bank made a mistake and froze her accounts. She told me you hacked her." "I didn't hack her," I said, looking at the spreadsheet where I was tracking the legal fees. "I just stopped depositing my paycheck into a black hole." "Well, she is telling everyone you stole her identity," Jessica said. "But the weird thing is, nobody is biting. Uncle Jerry asked her why she didn't just use Kyle's paycheck. She hung up on him." Uncle Jerry asking a logical question was a sign that the weather was changing. For years, the family narrative had been that Claire was the rich, childless executive who should share the wealth. But now that the wealth was gone, the questions were getting sharper. Why is the power out? Why is the fridge empty? Why is Kyle still on the couch? Except Kyle wasn't on the couch anymore. Kyle Mercer, the man who had fathered 3 of the 5 children and was presumably the father of the 6th, dissolved. He didn't explode. He didn't fight for his family. He didn't get a job to prove us wrong. He simply evaporated on a Tuesday afternoon, while Brittany was likely screaming at a utility customer service representative. Kyle packed a duffel bag. He told Mason he was going to his brother's house in Cleveland to look for work. He took the gaming console, the one I had bought for the kids 2 Christmases ago, and left. He blocked Brittany's number. He blocked Mason's number. He didn't say goodbye to the 6-year-old. He just realized the host organism was dying. And like a tick, he detached to find a fresh vein. Brittany was left alone, pregnant, broke, and drowning in a reality she had successfully avoided for a decade. But desperation does not make a narcissist humble. It makes them creative. And that was when the second wave of fraud hit. I was sitting in Aaron's office, reviewing the cease and desist letters. When my phone buzzed, it was a fraud alert. But not from a credit card. It was from a car rental agency. Enterprise Rent-A-Car Confirmation for Reservation, 88492. Pickup Columbus North Branch. Vehicle Class Premium SUV. I stared at the screen. She is renting a car, I said, sliding the phone across the mahogany desk to Aaron. A premium SUV, in my name. Aaron put on her glasses. She used your driver's license number, she noted, her voice devoid of surprise. She must have made a copy of it when she raided your filing cabinet. She is trying to bypass the credit check by using your profile. Why? I asked. She doesn't have anywhere to go. She needs a prop, Aaron said. She can't be the poor abandoned victim if she's taking the bus. She needs to look like she is still functioning, and she probably told herself she needs it for medical appointments. That is her shield. Everything is for the baby. I am canceling it, I said, reaching for the phone. No, Aaron said sharply. She put her hand over mine. Not yet. Aaron, that is $1,000 a week. We aren't going to let her take the car, Aaron explained. But we are going to let her try. I have a contact in the fraud department at the rental agency. We are going to flag the reservation as fraudulent, but leave it active in the system. When she shows up to pick it up, she will have to present a physical ID and sign a contract. If she tries to sign your name, that is forgery, on camera, with witnesses. It is a trap, I said. It is a honeypot, Aaron corrected. We need more than just digital footprints. Claire, digital footprints can be explained away by a good defense attorney as computer errors or misunderstandings. We need her physically committing the act. We need to see her walk up to that counter, claim to be Claire Butler, and try to drive away with an asset she didn't pay for. I felt a cold knot in my stomach. It was ruthless. It was necessary. Do it, I said, while Aaron set the trap. The social war began. Aunt Marlene, realizing that her golden niece was floundering, decided that I was the villain of the century. She didn't call me, she knew I wouldn't answer, but she called Simon, relentlessly. We were eating dinner, grilled chicken and vegetables, a meal that cost $12 and tasted like freedom, when Simon's phone lit up. It was a group text. Family prayer circle. Marlene had added Simon back into the group. Marlene, we need to pray for Brittany. She has been abandoned by those she trusted most. It is a sin to turn your back on family. To steal from a pregnant woman is to steal from God. Cousin Brenda. Wait. Who stole from her? I thought Claire paid the rent. Marlene Claire cut her off. Left her with nothing. Took the emergency money. It is demonic influence. Simon typing, I watched Simon's thumbs hover over the screen. He looked at me. His face was pale, but his jaw was set. Don't do it, I said softly. You don't have to engage. Yes, Simon said. I do. They are calling me a traitor. Claire, they are saying I let you become a monster. But I am the one who handed over the passwords. I am the one who let this happen, he typed. Simon. Nobody stole anything. Claire paid for that house for 3 years. She paid for the food, the clothes, and the debt. Brittany stole Claire's identity. She opened credit cards in Claire's name. That is why we left. It is not demonic. It is a felony. He hit send. The group chat exploded. Marlene. Liar. How dare you slander a mother? Cousin Brenda. Identity theft. Seriously, Uncle Jerry? Is that why the cops were there on Sunday? My neighbor said he saw a squad car. Simons. They were taking a report. Brittany tried to frame Claire for theft, and the police caught her lying on video. Marlene. You are dead to us. Simon. You are a weak, pathetic man controlled by a hateful woman. Simon, I would rather be dead to you than in debt to her. Remove me from this list. He put the phone down face first on the table. His hands were shaking. I am sorry, he whispered. I should have said that 3 years ago. It is okay, I said, reaching across the table to take his hand. You said it now. But while we were winning the information war, I couldn't stop thinking about the collateral damage. The kids. Mason was 17. He could fend for himself. But the little ones, Aiden, Sophie, Lucas, and Chloe, were innocent. They didn't ask to be born into a grift. They were just hungry kids wondering why the pantry was empty and why their dad was gone. I couldn't send money. If I sent cash, Brittany would spend it on herself. If I sent groceries, she would return them for store credit. I called my cousin Jessica again. Jess, I said, I need a favor, a big one. Name it, she said. The kids need to get to school, and they need to eat. Brittany isn't going to wake up to drive them, and Kyle is gone. Can you do the school run? Just for a week. I can do the morning run, Jessica said. But I work afternoons. I will pay you for your gas, I said. And I will set up a grocery order for pickup at the store near you. Basic stuff. Bread, milk, fruit, lunch meat. You keep the food at your house. You make the lunches. You hand them to the kids when you drop them off. Do not let the food go into Brittany's house. She will eat it or sell it. Claire, Jessica sighed, you are basically running a covert humanitarian aid mission. I am not letting them starve, I said. I am cutting off the parasite, not the host. The kids are the host. Okay, Jessica said. I will do it. But you know she is going to spin this. She will say you are trying to steal her children. Let her spin, I said. I have a lawyer for that too. 2 days later, the trap at the rental agency snapped shut. Erin called me at work. Her voice was tight with adrenaline. She is there, Erin said. She is at the counter. My contact is watching the security feed. Did she sign? I asked. She tried, Erin said. She presented a photocopy of your license, the one she kept from the file cabinet. She claimed her wallet was stolen. She signed the rental agreement as Claire Butler. The clerk flagged it, just like we planned. Did they arrest her? No, Erin said. We don't want a scene at the counter. The clerk told her the system was down and they couldn't process the transaction without a physical card. She threw a fit. She screamed about discrimination against pregnant women, but she left empty-handed. And now, we have the signature. We have the footage. We have the attempted fraud documented on a time-stamped corporate server. So what now? Now, Erin said. We send the update to the detective, we add it to the pile, and we wait for her to realize that the walls aren't just closing in, they are already touching. The reality of the situation finally seemed to hit Brittany that Friday. With the rental car denied, the credit cards frozen, the emergency cash non-existent, and Kyle gone, she had run out of moves. The tricks that had worked for a decade, the tears, the guilt, the I'm just a struggling mom routine were failing. The sheer mechanics of life were grinding her down. She tried to call me. My phone blocked it. She tried to call Simon. He blocked it. She tried to go to my old workplace. The security guard, briefed by HR, turned her away at the gate. Mason sent me a text late that night. She is freaking out. She called the electric company and tried to cry her way out of a shut-off notice. They told her to pay or buy candles. She threw a plate at the wall. I looked at the text. I didn't feel triumph. I felt a cold, hollow sadness. This was my sister. This was the girl I used to share a bunk bed with. But that girl was gone, replaced by a creature of pure need and manipulation. Is she okay? I texted back. No, Mason replied. She is scared, not because she is broke. She is scared because she realizes nobody is coming to save her this time. I put the phone down. Brittany was panicking, and a panic reaction from a narcissist is a dangerous thing. She wouldn't just curl up and accept defeat. She would lash out. She would try to burn the village down to keep herself warm. I looked at Simon, who was reading a book, actually reading, not just staring at a screen. He looked younger. The stress lines around his eyes were softening. "She is going to do something desperate," I said. Simon looked up. "Probably, but whatever she does it alone." "Not alone," I corrected. "She still has Marlene, and she still has the baby." The baby, the ultimate leverage, the human shield she had been polishing for 6 months. I had a feeling the next phase of this war wouldn't be fought with credit cards or car rentals. It would be fought in the court of public opinion, and the weapon would be that unborn child. "Get ready," I told Simon. "The financial well is dry. Now she's going to start drilling for sympathy." But I was ready. I had the receipts. I had the videos, and I had the truth. The ATM was closed. The kitchen was closed. And for the first time in her life, Brittany Shaw was going to have to pay the check. The air at Bright Harbor Systems Group smelled of ozone and expensive coffee. It was a sterile, regulated environment, a stark contrast to the humidity of the freight docks at Hearthline or the suffocating clutter of my sister's house. My office had a glass wall that looked out over the Cincinnati skyline. I had a desk chair that didn't squeak. I had a team of 3 analysts who reported to me. And when I gave them instructions, they didn't argue, cry, or ask me for a loan. They just did the work. 3 weeks into the job, I presented my first optimization plan to the senior leadership team. I had identified a bottleneck in their cross-country shipping routes that was costing the company $40,000 a quarter. When I finished the presentation, the room was silent. I braced myself. I waited for the criticism, the minimizing, "that is nice, Claire, but can you also organize the office holiday party?" Instead, the vice president of operations, a woman named Sarah, the same one who had interviewed me from the coffee shop, nodded. "This is brilliant," she said. "Actionable, data-driven, and lucrative. Excellent work. Claire." I sat there, blinking. I felt a strange tightness in my throat. It was the shock of being seen as a professional asset rather than a beast of burden. For 10 years, my competence had been treated as a convenience for others to exploit. Here, it was currency. "Thank you," I managed to say. "We are going to implement this next month," Sarah added. "And Claire, we usually do quarterly bonuses, but given the immediate impact of this, I am approving a spot bonus for you, $2,000. It will be in your next check. $2,000, just for doing my job. That was 2 months of groceries for Brittany's army. That was a car repair. That was a lifeline. And I didn't have to bleed for it. I drove home that evening to the corporate apartment that was starting to feel less like a bunker and more like a sanctuary, with a realization that hit me harder than the money. I had spent so long lighting myself on fire to keep others warm that I had forgotten what it felt like to just sit in the sun. Simon was home when I arrived. He was cooking dinner. It was pasta, simple and cheap, but the kitchen was clean. There were no sticky juice spills on the counter. There was no heavy metal music blaring from a teenager's phone. We ate at the small table. Between us lay a notebook. This was our new ritual. We called it the audit. "I opened my separate checking account today," Simon said, sliding a bank brochure across the table. "I deposited my paycheck. I set up an automatic transfer of 50% to the joint bill account. The rest is mine." "Good," I said. "And the credit freeze." "Done," he said. "And I changed the password to my email again. It is a phrase now. Greengrass High Tide 7. He paused. "Don't write it down." "I won't," I said. We were rebuilding our marriage. But not on romance. We were rebuilding it on forensic accounting. We saw a marriage counselor once a week, a stern woman named Dr. Evans who used words like enmeshment and codependency. She had told us in our last session that we were not suffering from a lack of love. We were suffering from a lack of sovereignty. We had let the borders of our relationship dissolve until Brittany had annexed our lives. "How are you feeling?" I asked him. Simon twisted his fork into the pasta. "Guilty," he admitted. "I keep thinking about the kids. I keep thinking about Aiden asking where I am. But," he looked up, and his eyes were clearer than they had been in years. "But I slept for 7 hours last night. I haven't done that since Mason moved into the basement." "Guilt is a symptom of withdrawal," I said, repeating Dr. Evans's words. "It isn't a moral compass." Later that night, I sat on the sofa with my laptop. My evening routine had changed. I no longer packed 5 lunchboxes. Instead, I checked the credit monitoring apps. It was a grim sort of satisfaction. The alerts had stopped. Since the rental car incident, there had been 0 inquiries. The freeze was holding. The walls were high. I reviewed the report like a cartographer reading a map of a war zone. I saw the scars, the hard inquiries. The new accounts Brittany had opened, but they were static. They were past tense. I was learning to look at the numbers without panicking, seeing them simply as data points in a case file. Then, my phone buzzed. It was the burner flip phone I kept in the drawer. Only 3 people had that number: Simon, Aaron, and Mason. It was a text from Mason. "She is going nuclear. She hired a consultant, some guy she met on a forum, to help her write a story. She is going to launch a GoFundMe campaign titled, 'Abandoned by Millionaire Sister While Pregnant.' She plans to post it on Facebook, TikTok, and Nextdoor. She is drafting the post now. She mentions you by name. She mentions Bright Harbor." My stomach dropped. This was the nightmare scenario. Public shaming. Brittany knew she couldn't win in a court of law, so she was taking it to the court of public opinion. She knew that a corporate environment like Bright Harbor hated drama. If she painted me as a monster who left a pregnant woman to starve, I could lose the job I had just started to love. I forwarded the text to Erin immediately. Then I called her. "Erin," I said, my voice tight, "she is going to destroy my reputation. If she tags my company, HR will freak out." "Calm down," Erin said. Her voice was steady, the anchor in the storm. "Claire, listen to me. This is not a disaster. This is an opportunity." How is being slandered an opportunity? Because up until now, she has been smart enough to keep most of her harassment verbal or within the family, Erin explained. But if she posts that story online, and if she uses it to solicit money via GoFundMe based on demonstrable lies, she is crossing a line from familial dispute to wire fraud and libel. She is creating a permanent public record of her malice. But the damage? "We will draft a preemptive letter to your HR department," Erin said. "We will explain that you are the victim of a targeted harassment campaign involving a disgruntled relative who is currently under police investigation for identity theft. Companies deal with this more than you think. As for Brittany, let her post it. Let her—" "Yes," Erin said ruthlessly. "Let her step into the trap. We need her to make a false statement of fact to a third party for financial gain. That is the definition of fraud. If she posts it, we don't comment. We don't argue in the comments section. We screenshot it, we notarize it, and we add it to the civil suit for defamation. We let her dig the hole so deep she can never climb out." I took a deep breath. It was terrifying to stand still while an arrow was aimed at my chest, trusting that the shield would hold. "Okay," I said. "We wait." But there was one thing I couldn't just wait on. The kids. The thought of Brittany using their hunger or their needs as a prop for her fundraising campaign made me sick. I wanted to help them, but I knew I couldn't give Brittany a single cent. It was a paradox. How do you feed the hostages without funding the terrorist? I took a half-day off work on Wednesday and went to a bank, a different one from my personal accounts. I sat down with a trust officer. "I want to open 5 custodial accounts," I told him. "Education savings accounts, Section 529 plans." "Okay," the banker said, typing on his keyboard. "And who are the beneficiaries?" "My nieces and nephews," I said. I gave him their names and social security numbers, data I had memorized years ago, because I was the one who filled out their school forms. And the trustee? Me, I said. Solely me. And the parents? He asked. Do you want to grant them view-only access? No, I said. The parents are to have zero access, zero visibility. They cannot withdraw a penny. This money is to be released only directly to an educational institution or a medical provider. Upon my authorization, I deposited $2,000 into the accounts my entire spot bonus from work. It wasn't a fortune, but it was a start. It was a promise. If something happens to me, I added, the successor trustee is my lawyer, Erin Caldwell. Under no circumstances is the mother, Brittany Shaw, to be given control. Understood, the banker said. He looked at me with a mixture of curiosity and respect. You are locking it down tight. I am building a vault, I said. Walking out of the bank, I felt a shift inside me. For years, I had told myself that loving my sister meant enduring her abuse. I thought that if I just took enough punishment, if I just paid enough bills, if I just forgave enough lies, eventually she would feel loved enough to change. I realize now how arrogant that was. I wasn't loving her. I was enabling her. I was shielding her from the consequences of her own life. My endurance wasn't love. It was cowardice. I was too afraid of the conflict to draw the line. Well, the line was drawn now, and it was drawn in reinforced concrete. On Friday afternoon, the call came. It wasn't Brittany. It was Aunt Marlene. I debated letting it go to voicemail, but Erin had told me to answer. Gather intel. She had said, Hello, Marlene, I said. Claire? Marlene's voice was surprisingly soft. It wasn't the accusatory tone from the living room intervention. It was the tone of a weary peacekeeper. How are you? I am fine, I said. I am working. We miss you. Marlene lied. Listen, things have gotten out of hand. Brittany is in a bad way. The stress is bad for the baby, and this police business, it is tearing the family apart. Brittany tore the family apart when she stole my identity, I said calmly. I know, Marlene soothed. She made mistakes. She is desperate, but we can't have police involved. Claire, it is unseemly. We are a family, not a crime syndicate. I almost laughed at that. What do you want? Marlene, I want to broker a peace, she said. I want you and Simon to come over, not to Brittany's house. I know you won't go there. Come to my house, Sunday afternoon, just a coffee. You, me, Brittany, and Simon. No police, no lawyers, just family. Let's work out a payment plan for what she owes you. And in exchange, you drop the civil protection order. It was a classic trap. Get me in a room, gang up on me, use emotional manipulation to get me to sign away my legal rights. Just family, the two most dangerous words in the English language. I will think about it, I said. Please, Claire, Marlene pressed. She is ready to apologize. She wants to make it right. She has a plan to pay you back. Brittany didn't have a plan to pay me back. Brittany didn't have $5. But I knew what this meeting really was. It was a desperation play. They needed me to drop the legal pressure because the walls were closing in. I called Erin. Marlene wants a summit, I said. Sunday? Her house? Absolutely not, Erin said initially. You do not go into a room with your abuser without representation. But, I interrupted, Marlene said Brittany has a plan to pay me back. She said Brittany is ready to admit fault. There was a silence on the line. I could hear Erin thinking. If she admits fault in front of a witness, Erin said slowly, and if we can get that on record that cements the civil suit, it proves she knows the debt is valid. It stops her from claiming later that you gave her the money as a gift. So I go. You go, Erin decided. But you go wiretapped. Ohio is a one-party consent state for recording conversations. As long as you are part of the conversation, you can record it without telling them. You bring your phone. You record everything. You let her talk. You let her make promises she can't keep. You let her admit she stole the money. And if she tries to guilt me, "You are Teflon," Aaron said. "Nothing sticks. You are there for data collection, not reconciliation. You are a spy in enemy territory." "Okay," I said. "I will do it. And Claire," Aaron added, "take Simon, but tell him the mission parameters. He doesn't speak unless spoken to. He is a witness, not a participant. If they smell fear on him, they will attack." "He is ready," I said, and I believed it. Sunday came. The sky was overcast, a flat, oppressive gray. Simon and I drove to Marlene's house in the suburbs. It was a pristine house with manicured hedges and a statue of a cherub in the front yard, a facade of perfect suburban morality masking the rot inside. I checked the voice recorder app on my phone. It was running. I slipped the phone into the front pocket of my blazer, microphone facing out. "Ready?" Simon asked. He was gripping the steering wheel, his knuckles white. "Remember," I said, "we are not family today. We are the IRS. We listen, we nod, we document." We walked up the path. Marlene opened the door before we even knocked. She hugged me, a stiff, perfumed embrace that felt like being squeezed by a boa constrictor. "I am so glad you came," she whispered. "Brittany is in the living room." We walked in. Brittany was sitting on the floral sofa. She looked terrible. Her roots were grown out. Her face was gaunt, but her eyes were bright with a feverish intensity. She didn't stand up. "Hi," she said. "Brittany?" I nodded. I sat on the chair opposite her. Simon stood behind me, a silent sentinel. "I just want this to stop," Brittany said, her voice trembling. "I can't take the stress. The cops showing up, the letters from your lawyer. It is killing me. Claire." "It stops when the fraud stops," I said. "I didn't mean to hurt you," Brittany said. "I just needed help. I thought because you have so much, you wouldn't miss it. I was going to pay you back." Bingo. Admission of taking it without asking. Admission of intent to repay. Acknowledging it was a loan, not a gift. "How?" I asked. "How are you going to pay me back?" "Brittany, you owe me $4,000 on the credit cards alone, plus the identity theft damages." Brittany looked at Marlene. Marlene nodded encouragingly. "I am going to sell my story," Brittany said. I froze. "What?" "I have a publisher," Brittany lied. I knew it was a lie, but I let her talk. "Or, well, a website. They want to pay for my story, about being a single mom of 6, about the struggle. It is going to be big. Claire, viral. And when the money comes in, I will pay you, every cent." "But," she paused, and here came the pivot. "But I can't sell the story if I look like a criminal. I need you to drop the police report. I need you to tell the cops it was a misunderstanding. If you do that, I can get the deal, and I can pay you." It was a blackmail loop. Let me get away with the crime, and I will use the proceeds from exploiting our tragedy to pay you back for the crime. "So your plan," I clarified, speaking clearly for the recording, "is to sell a story about our family to pay off the debts you incurred by stealing my identity." "It is not stealing," Brittany snapped. "It was borrowing, and yes, it is a win-win. You get your money, I get my career." "And what if I say no?" I asked. Brittany's face darkened. The mask slipped. "Then I sell a different story," she said softly. "The one where you kicked a pregnant woman out of her family. The one where you hate children. And I will make sure everyone at that fancy new job of yours knows exactly what kind of person you are." "Is that a threat?" I asked. "It is a promise," Brittany sneered. "I will ruin you, Claire. I will make you so toxic nobody will hire you. Unless you help me." I felt the phone buzzing in my pocket against my chest. Not a text, just the hum of the device recording every syllable of her extortion. I stood up. "Thank you, Brittany," I said. "That clarifies everything." "So you will drop it?" Marlene asked hopefully. "No," I said. "I won't." Brittany's eyes went wide. "You bitch. You want me to starve. I want you to grow up. I said, "and I am not afraid of your story, because I have my own." I turned to Simon. "We are leaving. You can't walk out." Marlene shouted, "We haven't settled anything." "We settled everything," Simon said. It was the first time he had spoken. He looked at Brittany. "You just tried to blackmail your sister in front of witnesses. You haven't changed. You have just gotten louder." We walked out. Brittany was screaming behind us, throwing pillows, cursing our names. Marlene was chasing us to the door, babbling about forgiveness. We got to the car. I locked the doors. I pulled the phone out of my pocket and stopped the recording. "Did you get it?" Simon asked. "I got it," I said. "I got the admission of debt. I got the admission of the theft. And I got the extortion threat against my employment. It is a full house." I sent the audio file to Aaron immediately. 30 seconds later, Aaron texted back, "Beautiful. This isn't just a civil suit anymore. This is criminal coercion. We don't need to take revenge by hand. Claire, we just need to let them sign their own sentence." And she just signed it in bold ink. I looked at the house one last time. It looked small in the rearview mirror. "Let's go home," I told Simon. "We have a court date to prepare for." The courtroom smelled of floor wax and stale anxiety. It was a civil hearing, combined with a preliminary review for the fraud allegations. But the atmosphere felt heavy enough for a murder trial. I sat on the left side of the aisle, wearing a navy blue suit that I had bought with my own money. From my own account, without asking anyone's permission. Simon sat next to me. His hands were clasped on the table, his knuckles white. But he was not shaking. Erin Caldwell sat between us, arranging her files with the geometric precision of a surgeon preparing for an operation. On the other side of the aisle sat Brittany. She had dressed for the role of her life. She wore a soft, pastel pink maternity dress that draped loosely over her body. She had no makeup on, leaving her face pale and drawn. She rubbed her stomach constantly, a rhythmic, hypnotic motion designed to draw the eyes of the judge and the gallery to her condition. Next to her sat a court-appointed lawyer who looked like he had met her 5 minutes ago and already regretted it. And behind her, like a gargoyle guarding a cathedral, sat Aunt Marlene, the judge. A woman named Honorable Judge Vance walked in. She did not look like the kind of woman who tolerated nonsense. She adjusted her glasses and looked down at the docket. "We are here regarding the petition for a civil protection order and the counterclaim regarding financial support," Judge Vance said. "Let us proceed." Marlene did not wait for an invitation. She stood up from the gallery, clutching her purse as if it contained the 10 Commandments. "Your Honor," Marlene announced, her voice trembling with righteous indignation. "If I may speak, I am the matriarch of this family. This entire proceeding is a disgrace. We have a pregnant mother here who has been abandoned by her wealthy, heartless sister. This is a family matter, not a legal one. Claire needs to remember her duty to God and her blood." Judge Vance lowered her glasses. She stared at Marlene. "Ma'am," the judge said, her voice ice-cold. "Sit down. This is a court of law, not a Sunday school. We determine facts here, not moral obligations based on your personal theology. If you interrupt these proceedings again, I will have the bailiff remove you." Marlene turned a shade of purple I had never seen before and sank back into the bench. "Ms. Caldwell," the judge said, "you may present your evidence regarding the harassment and financial fraud claims." Erin stood up. She didn't speechify. She didn't wave her arms. She simply opened the war binder and began to lay out the timeline of destruction. "Your Honor," Erin began, "on January 9th, 2026, the defendant, Ms. Shaw, accessed my client's personal information without consent to open a line of credit at a luxury baby boutique. We have the IP address logged from the defendant's home. We have the email confirmation sent to a fraudulent address created by the defendant." Erin placed a document on the judge's bench. "On January 14th, Erin continued, the defendant used my client's identity to attempt to rent a premium SUV. We have the security footage from the rental agency showing Ms. Shaw signing the contract as Claire Butler." She placed the flash drive on the bench. And on January 20th, the defendant filed a false forwarding address with the United States Postal Service to intercept my client's employment contract, a federal crime which is currently under separate investigation. Brittany's lawyer tried to object. Your Honor, my client was under extreme duress. She believed she had implied consent because of their prior financial arrangement. She was just trying to provide for her unborn child. Implied consent does not cover identity theft, Judge Vance said dryly. Continue. Aaron pulled out a new piece of paper. This was one I hadn't seen until this morning. Furthermore, Your Honor, Aaron said, we have evidence of continued malicious intent. 3 days ago, after my client had successfully frozen her credit, a transaction was attempted on the compromised card. It was not for food. It was not for medical supplies. It was for a $500 spa package at the Whispering Willow Day Spa. I gasped softly. Brittany had tried to book a spa day while claiming she was starving. The transaction was declined, Aaron noted. But the attempt proves that the defendant was not acting out of survival. She was acting out of entitlement. Brittany shifted in her seat. She stopped rubbing her stomach for a second, shooting a look of pure venom at Aaron. I call Simon Lowe to the stand, Aaron said. Simon stood up. He walked to the witness box. He looked at me, then at Brittany. Brittany locked eyes with him, mouthing the word family. Simon looked away. Mr. Lowe, Aaron said. Did you authorize Ms. Shaw to use your wife's information? No, Simon said clearly. Did you participate in the fraud? I facilitated it, Simon admitted, his voice unwavering. I gave Brittany the access code to our cloud account. She told me she needed to upload photos for a calendar. I didn't know she was going to use it to lock Claire out of her laptop and steal her files. I was naive. I was trying to keep the peace, but I never agreed to theft. And did Ms. Shaw ever admit to you that she knew what she was doing was wrong? Simon nodded. He pulled a piece of paper from his pocket, a printout of a text message. On January 15th, she texted me, "Don't tell Claire about the card. I will pay it back before she notices. If she finds out, just tell her you did it. She won't be mad at you." A murmur ran through the courtroom. Brittany had tried to set Simon up as the fall guy. She wanted me to take the blame, Simon said, looking at his hands. She used me. Brittany's lawyer looked defeated. He whispered something to her, but she shoved his arm away. I have one final piece of evidence, Aaron said. A recording provided by Mason Shaw, the defendant's son. She played the audio file. Brittany's voice filled the high ceilings of the courtroom, tinny but unmistakable. I will just tell everyone he hit me. He won't do anything. He is a coward. And Claire, she is terrified of authority. She will come running back. Brittany's face went white, then red, then white again. She stood up. That is fake, she screamed. That is my son would never betray me. He loves me. Sit down, Ms. Shaw, Judge Vance barked. No, Brittany yelled, and the tears started, real tears this time. Tears of rage. You are all ganging up on a pregnant woman. I need a break. My baby. I am having contractions. She doubled over, clutching her belly. Marlene shrieked from the back. Help her. She is in labor. It was the ultimate defense, the medical emergency, the trump card that stopped all logic. Judge Vance looked at Brittany. She didn't look panicked. She looked at a file on her desk, a file that had been subpoenaed by the court to verify Brittany's request for special medical accommodations during the trial. Ms. Shaw, the judge said. Her voice was strangely quiet. Please stop acting. Brittany froze, mid-groan. Excuse me. We received your medical records this morning from the clinic you cited in your affidavit, Judge Vance said, opening the file. According to these records, you visited the clinic on January 10th. You were given a pregnancy test. The result was negative. The room went so silent you could hear the hum of the air conditioning. Furthermore, the judge continued, reading from the page, the physician noted that you have a tubal ligation on file from 4 years ago. It is medically impossible for you to be pregnant with a sixth child. You are not pregnant. Ms. Shaw, you haven't been pregnant this entire time. My mouth fell open. I looked at Simon. He looked like he had been slapped. The sixth baby, the stroller, the crib, the cravings, the maternity clothes. It was all a lie, a massive, elaborate, psychological construct designed to trap me for another 18 years. She knew I would never kick out a pregnant woman, so she invented one. "That is a lie," Brittany screamed, but her voice cracked. She stood up straight, abandoning the fake hunch. "The doctors are idiots. I know my body. I am pregnant." "You are not," Judge Vance said, slamming the file shut. "You are committing perjury in my courtroom. You have used a non-existent pregnancy to extort money, manipulate your family, and attempt to delay justice." Brittany looked around the room. She looked at Marlene. Even Marlene looked horrified. Her hand over her mouth. The matriarch had been duped just like the rest of us. Brittany stammered. "I just needed help. If I wasn't pregnant, Claire wouldn't care. She only cares about her money." "So you admit it," Judge Vance said. Brittany sank into her chair. She looked small. She didn't look like a monster anymore. She looked like exactly what she was, a sad, desperate woman who had built a cage of lies and lost the key. "The court finds in favor of the plaintiff," Judge Vance said, banging her gavel. "Ms. Shaw, you are ordered to pay full restitution for all fraudulent charges, totaling $4,322. You are also responsible for the plaintiff's legal fees." "I don't have any money," Brittany wailed. "Then your wages will be garnished," the judge said. "And if you do not have a job, you will find one. Furthermore, I am granting a permanent restraining order. You are to have no contact with Claire Butler or Simon Lowe, no calls, no texts, no third-party contact through family members." The judge turned her gaze to the back of the room. "Ms. Holt," she said to Marlene, "that applies to you too. If you attempt to harass the plaintiffs on Ms. Shaw's behalf, you will be held in contempt." Marlene nodded weakly, looking at her feet. "Finally," Judge Vance said, "regarding the identity theft and the mail fraud, I am referring this file to the district attorney's office. This was not a family dispute. This was a systematic financial crime. We are done here." The gavel hit the wood with a sound like a gunshot. "All rise." We walked out of the courtroom. The hallway was bright with afternoon sun. Brittany was still sitting at the defense table, weeping into her hands. Marlene was standing over her, not comforting her, but scolding her in a harsh whisper. I walked through the double doors and took a deep breath. I expected to feel triumphant. I expected to want to cheer, but I didn't. I just felt tired and light. "It was fake," Simon whispered, shaking his head. "The whole time, the baby was fake." "It was the ultimate hook," I said. She knew it was the one thing we couldn't say no to. Erin snapped her briefcase shut. "Well, she is going to have a hard time explaining that to the district attorney. You guys are free. The order is active immediately." "Thank you, Erin," I said. "You saved my life. I just filed the paperwork." Erin smiled. "You saved yourself." 6 months later, Simon and I moved to a townhouse in a quiet neighborhood on the other side of Cincinnati. It has a small garden. I am growing tomatoes. Simon joined a bowling league. We have friends who don't know my sister's name. I still work at Bright Harbor. I got another promotion last month. I am the director of logistics now. We never heard from Brittany again. The restraining order and the threat of jail time finally built a wall she couldn't climb. Marlene sent one Christmas card. I returned it unopened, but I didn't abandon the kids. Every month, the trust accounts I set up receive a deposit. I sent the account details to Mason. He knows that when the time comes for college, or trade school, or just escaping, the money is there. It is locked away where Brittany can't touch it. Mason texts me sometimes. He tells me he is counting down the days until he is 18. He tells me the other kids are okay, that Jessica is still helping out. that the family finally stepped in to force Brittany to get a job at a call center. I stood in my new kitchen, looking out at the sunset. The phone on the counter was silent. My bank account was full. My credit score was 800. I thought about the sentence I used to say to myself, family is everything. I realized I was wrong. Family is not everything. Family is people, and people can be dangerous. I poured 2 glasses of wine as Simon walked in the front door, humming a tune. I did not cut off my family. I cut off their right to exploit me. And in doing so, I finally found the one thing I had been looking for all along, a home that no one could steal. Thank you so much for listening to this story. It was a journey of betrayal, justice, and finding the strength to walk away. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. Are you listening from the US, the UK, Vietnam, or somewhere else? Please leave a comment below sharing your location and your thoughts on Claire's decision. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the Juliet Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit the hype button to help this story reach more people who might need to hear it. Your support means the world to us.